Chapter 780. Many famous light magi and Merlin medal winners have stated that the casting of white magic and black magic requires a magus's inner emotions to be induced. That's right, I'm talking about Dumbledore. In the previous black magic class, your professor also told you that white magic, such as a bodyguard, Chen-Ong flicked his wrist, and a ray of silver light floated out from the tip of his wand. Soon, the silver light expanded rapidly, and a silver-clouded leopard landed on the ground along with a ball of silver light. It pounced on the first and second years, passing through their bodies. Then the guardian god opened its mouth, and Chen-Ang's voice came from its mouth. It's a symbol that reflects one's inner heart. It requires one to focus and think about the happiest things in one's heart. It requires a magus to nurture a powerful, positive emotion. That's why dark magi cannot use it. But you've all seen the results. I know that many magi who graduated from this school know this kind of high-level hex. In a way, they are the shame of Durmstrang. Due to the influence of traditional beliefs, magi who learn this kind of hex have many disadvantages when it comes to black magic. It's hard for them to maintain a strong destructive force. Chen-Ong paused for a moment before continuing. But it's obvious that I'm vicious and merciless. I'm a true and outstanding dark sorcerer. That's why this is obviously a lie. Otherwise, those Oros in the Ministry of Magic, this is a British term, wouldn't be able to learn Guardian Hex, while also being proficient in destructive black magic. From what I know, Dumbledore's unforgivable hex is very smooth. Chen-Ong glanced at the students and found that they were listening attentively, but not as obsessed and focused as he wanted. It was obvious that the peaceful world of magic made these students uninterested in black magic. This was not what Chen-Ong wanted. At this moment, Chen-Ong suddenly understood why acolytes lived in such a harsh environment in Farron's Wizard Tower. In some evil wizard organizations, such as the Scattered Forest Tower and the Red Robe Wizard Organization, they were cruel and merciless. That was to let the acolytes know the value of power and the power of mages. No matter where it was, people would not treasure cheap things. However, when one's life was in danger, any life-saving straw was precious. Chen-Ong felt that it was pathetic. He stopped explaining the knowledge of black magic to the students and used his cold eyes to wake them up. Then he said coldly, "It seems that you don't know the value of knowledge. It's time to let you know the power of a school bully. A peaceful and comfortable dark magic school would never be able to nurture outstanding dark magi. I need the chain of disdain, the concept of hierarchy and the laws of nature. I don't want to nurture a group of dark magi like Voldemort. They can only be that bad. What I need is evil, and I don't even need evil, but the pursuit of truth. I can also pursue eternity, but I definitely won't muddle through like this." Chen-Ong made up his mind. He said indifferently, "I don't expect you to realize the value of knowledge and move your life's pursuit from money, power, and even social status, which are meaningless and vulgar goals. Instead, you should devote your life to the pursuit of truth. Because some people, most people, are destined to be despicable. They are the ones who are ruled. But you should at least realize that under your vulgar pursuit of power, status, and money, knowledge is still a step that must be taken. For the sake of it, you should at least respect it. I understand your current state very well. Lowly creatures succumb to the instinct of their own blood. After all, making people diligent and diligent is a kind of reverse flow that goes against human nature. No one is born to be diligent, but lazy muddling through is a behavior that we are born to do. Going against a nature imposed on human nature to pursue things that do not belong to us is, of course, painful. But pain is a journey that must be taken. In order to mold you into a real person, I have no choice but to take some necessary measures. Now, look at the books on your left." As soon as Chen-Ong finished speaking, a few stacked books appeared on everyone's left. Azathos and Other Horrors. Chen-Ong read the name of the book on the top. There were other good books like The Nameless Sacrificial Book, The Truth of Magic, and Kanemego's testament. I need you to come into contact with the real evil, not trash like Voldemort, but the real ancient things that can make you go crazy and come into contact with the truth of the world. Of course, it is the truth that has been distorted. Only then will you realize what a terrifying world you are living in, and how dangerous the so-called magic in your body is. This process is what today's black magic lesson will teach. In the next lesson, I will teach you how to stay awake and counter these evils. The most important part of black magic is controlling black magic. In this way, you will no longer face the knowledge I teach you with such a vulgar and poor attitude, because you really need it. If someone is unfortunate enough to go crazy before the next lesson, it can only be said that they are unlucky. Anyway, it's just a little early. Now, open Azathoth and the Other Horrors. This is a collection of poems. It describes the Muggle poet Edward Pickman Derby's series of lyrics about his nightmares. The reason why I read this book first is because the evil hidden in it is relatively less terrifying. Evil. Someone sneered, because of the crazy words of a Muggle? Chin-Ong did not seem to care. He did not need to be punished. When they read the poems, they would know that they were wrong. Wizards had chaotic magic, and they were even more sensitive than Muggles. Sometimes, it was not a good thing to be observant and sensitive, as it would cause one's mana to drop very quickly. Of course, coming into contact with these chaotic things that were homologous to their magic would indeed stimulate the development of their magic. Moreover, unlike Malfoy, who read the Book of the Dead, they did not have a magic book left behind by the gods to protect their sanity. The older the wizard, the more powerful his magic was, and the easier it was for him to dream. They would dream of strange things, and some could even be said to be the truth of the world. Now that they had come into contact with Azathoth and Other Horrors, Chin-Ong was sure that these young wizards would have a good dream, a dream of sweet happiness. Generally speaking, Muggles would need about a week to go from reading to dreaming, but for wizards it might not even take a day. In the remaining time, Chin-Ong dissected some of the internal emotional mechanisms of black magic, and then led them to recite the clear poem Azathoth and Other Horrors 3 times, as well as to Asina's and Dead But Not Dead, before the lesson was dismissed. Chapter 781. For the past few days, Harry had been secretly studying the Book of Golden Sun at night. He had already figured out some of the magic recorded in the book. Last time, when he chanted the first half of Arise, Praise the Sun, he had entered the spirit world. Harry guessed that the second half would allow him to go deeper into the final resting place of the soul. In Egypt, that was the underworld, but he did not know what it was in London. He discovered that he could influence and manipulate the spirits of the dead. He could enter the spirit world at any time and walk in another plane that the wizards could not see. The biggest benefit was that he no longer had to worry about being caught while roaming at night. But recently, Harry did not dare to roam at night and try to touch the magic book again. The commotion he made last time had made Hogwarts very nervous. The professors took turns to watch the night, and the students were also anxious. They exchanged information everywhere. Ron said confidently, "That must be an evil spirit. It lingers in the corridors and makes all kinds of strange noises every night." "No!" Neville mustered his courage and said in a trembling voice, "That is a mummy. My granny knows a few Egyptian magician incantations. So this is how she chanted the hieroglyphics. I was scared when I heard the incantation that day. Only mummies can chant incantations like that." Harry did not participate in their discussion. He stood aside, feeling a little guilty and awkward. Ron and Neville argued for a while, then turned to Harry and asked, "Harry, what do you think? Was it a mummy or a spirit that invaded the school that day?" "It was me," Harry replied in his heart. He felt a little guilty, but there was also a trace of hidden excitement. He could only say that he was a natural Gryffindor troublemaker. Harry opened his mouth and stammered, I think it's a Death Eater." An annoying voice that Harry was familiar with came from behind. Harry turned around. It was indeed the annoying Malfoy. Harry had not seen him recently. He used to be the most showy guy in Slytherin, but he had been living in seclusion recently. This was the first time Harry saw Malfoy other than during class. Malfoy's face was pale, but it was not devoid of blood. Instead, it was a kind of profoundness, as if it was a bottomless well. Malfoy's impetuousness and arrogance of a pampered child had disappeared. He no longer looked at others with his nose in the air, and that impetuousness had turned into confidence. It was the kind of confidence that Hermione used to show, but he didn't have Hermione's scholarly confidence mixed with the Muggle's inferiority complex, which was the temperament of a Miss Know-it-all. It was old Malfoy, a mixture of aristocratic affectation and self-confidence in power and strength. This reminded Harry of what he had overheard Snape say the other night, that Malfoy was learning the cutting-edge dark magic. This made Harry feel even more disgusted with him. Fortunately, when Malfoy saw Harry, he had a very familiar sour look on his face. "Don't you know? The Death Eaters of Azkaban had broken out of prison. They are now moving around. The professors also suspect that the incident that night was caused by a Death Eater invading Hogwarts. I thought you already knew. Especially Weasley. Isn't his father working in the Ministry of Magic? It seems that Mr. Weasley is not valued in the Ministry of Magic. A few of my father's powerful friends even wrote letters to inform him. But Mr. Weasley is in the Ministry of Magic, but no one is willing to tell him about this," Ron said angrily. "That's because your father is well informed among the Death Eaters. Who knows if he and those permanent paste—" Malfoy shook his wrist, and the wand hidden in a secret pocket in his sleeve fell into his hand. He chanted the spell quickly and hastily, and before Harry could react, he had used the sticky spell to glue Ron's upper and lower lips together, sealing Ron's mouth. It happened so quickly that most people could not react in time. Harry shouted angrily and was about to rush forward, but Malfoy easily blocked him with layers of obstacles. Malfoy laughed coldly. "It seems that Mr. Ron knows what he shouldn't do with his mouth. If he dares to speak carelessly again, his mouth and Mr. Weasley's position will be in trouble again. I remember that Mr. Weasley was just reinstated because his stupid son drove a flying Muggle car and caused a huge ruckus. I hope he won't be suspended again because of that son of his rudely slandering a respected pureblood. The Weasley family depends on his salary." Malfoy glanced at Ron's old uniform and wand as he spoke. He turned around and left with a sneer. Ron's expression changed drastically, and he angrily howled at Malfoy's back. Malfoy suddenly turned back halfway and said, "The headmaster of Durmstrand has proposed an exchange program with Hogwarts, including a fellowship for the seniors and an exchange for the juniors. Dumbledore is considering it, but he won't be considering it for long. My father and the other school directors are happy to see it happen. Since Dumbledore became the headmaster, Hogwarts achievements are obvious to all. But whether it's flattery or actual achievements, we need to compare it with other magic schools. Soon, you'll hear about the exchange program between the two schools. Durmstrand is a truly open magic school. I must say, their professors are much more open-minded than Dumbledore. Not just any nameless person can sneak into such an important exchange program. And I hope that some famous people won't leak anything during the exchange and bring shame to Hogwarts," Malfoy said loudly. "Durmstrang is a school that focuses on dueling magic and magic duels. They are famous for their black magic teaching results. I dare say that no other magic school students are more suited to this kind of competition than them." Malfoy loudly praised Durmstrang. Harry shouted at Malfoy, "So you can't do it either, right?" Malfoy did not fall for it. He only smiled sarcastically at Harry and turned to leave. Ron had already removed the sticky spell that sealed his mouth. He was about to go mad with anger. Although Gryffindor's classmates came to comfort him, most of them were deep in thought. The news of the Death Eaters' prison break made them extremely uneasy, and many of them were trembling in fear. During the flying lesson, Madam Hooch explained the news to everyone. She consoled them. There's no evidence that the Death Eaters invaded Hogwarts yet. Professor Snape is investigating what happened that day. The Ministry of Magic has taken control of the situation and is pursuing the Death Eaters with all their might. They're like stray dogs, not daring to show themselves. Hogwarts has Headmaster Dumbledore and the professors. They're the people that the Death Eaters fear the most. Chapter 782. As expected, Dumbledore did not reject the exchange with Durmstrang. This was within Chin-Ang's expectations. The greatest light magus in history seemed to have no bottom line. But when things were still under his control, even the life and death of his most innocent student was not a decisive factor for him to consider. In the eyes of this great light magus, it seemed that anyone could be sacrificed for love. For the sake of his plan, he could sit back and watch as the pure-blood family that had always supported him, as well as his loyal follower, the youngest daughter of the Weasley family, ran around Hogwarts with Voldemort's soul fragment, almost losing her soul. Similarly, when the snake monster was wreaking havoc in Hogwarts, this light wizard did not have the slightest intention of intervening. He still wanted to test the appointed savior. He did not arrange for the Dementors to enter Hogwarts for inspection, but the Ministry of Magic actually did it, letting a group of black robes come into contact with the weakest and most defenseless little magi. As expected, the daughter of a Ministry of Magic official would not enter Hogwarts to study. It was not unreasonable for Chin-Ang to suspect that the bunch of idiots in the Ministry of Magic were all supporters of the hidden Dementors. Of course, Chin-Ang was not a kind person. He read the Cthulhu mythos to the little magi during his dark magic classes, and it was said that it was worse than letting the Dementors come into contact with them. However, Chin-Ang never saw magi as humans, and those magi were Dumbledore supporters, the foundation of the Ministry of Magic. Compared to them, Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic were more ruthless. Chin-Ang felt that Dumbledore was probably very curious about the new Dark Devil. No matter what choice he made, collecting information about the new Dark Devil was the top priority. Durmstrang had obviously been infiltrated, so Dumbledore might put things on his home turf to better collect information and respond. That was why he guessed that Dumbledore might agree to the exchange between the two schools. Just like how Dumbledore agreed to the Triwizard Tournament, an ancient tournament where it was obvious that someone was up to no good. This tournament was very dangerous, and the reason it was stopped was because too many participants had died. This kind of competition was held in the same school, and the parents actually did not object, saying that Dumbledore obstructed it. This must be bullshit. Chin-Ang felt that the Magi still retained many of the customs of the Middle Ages, such as bloodline discrimination, black magic, and cruelty. Someone had indeed died. Cedric Diggory, a victim of Dumbledore's plan, one of the best students at Hogwarts, the pride of Hufflepuff, a boy full of wisdom, talent, and elegance. To be fair, if Harry Potter did not have the Messiah halo, he would have been at least 8 blocks below Cedric. If Dumbledore did not foresee that there was something fishy about the Goblet of Fire tournament, then he was stupid. If he had foreseen it, but did not stop it, instead taking advantage of the situation and putting his students in danger by watching Cedric Diggory die, then he was vicious. If he only caused Cedric Diggory's death because of his negligence, then he was vicious and stupid. That's why I think Dumbledore has the potential to become the Black Devil. In Hogwarts, the first 2 people who have the potential to become the Black Devil are Dumbledore and Harry Potter. Their characteristics are different. Dumbledore is determined, Harry Potter is confused. Dumbledore is like Gellert Grindelwald. Harry Potter is like Tom Riddle. Dumbledore is calm, likes to control everything in his hands, and will sacrifice others to achieve his goals. Harry Potter is indecisive, hides the devil in his heart, and will sacrifice himself to achieve his goals. They are all potential candidates for the Black Wizards. Compared to them, Malfoy is still a child. Malfoy, who grew up spoiled by his parents, is proud, sharp, and mean. He has the hypocrisy of an aristocrat and the cruelty of a Death Eater. But in fact, The Malfoy family values family more than Dumbledore, who keeps saying that he wants wool socks. They can be cruel to strangers, but as long as they see their family as everything, they will never become the Black Devil. There is only one way for Malfoy to become the Black Devil. Force him to kill his family. Chun-Ong calmly analyzed. Now, I have put all the tools that can make Dumbledore and Harry Potter become the Black Devil into Hogwarts. But how they will develop depends on fate. People have things that they want to get back, but this kind of temptation is a fatal poison. Golden Sun Sutra. Under your power of light, how much of the darkness of human nature is hidden? Now, there are 3 people around you who desperately want your power, who will succeed in the end. Lifestone, Golden Sun Sutra, is the bait for Harry Potter, Dumbledore, and Snape. Black Sutra of the Dead is the bait for Voldemort, Malfoy, and Old Malfoy. Love, how many sins have been committed in your name? Chun-Ong stood at the bow of the ship, which was anchored on a high mountain lake next to Durmstrand Castle. The students of Durmstrand had already boarded the ship and were now standing behind Chun-Ong. They stood a distance away from Chun-Ong in fear. Many of the younger students had powerful magic, but because of their lack of control, they unconsciously released the magic in their bodies. Therefore, they attracted the fog. Black, ghostly shadows danced in the fog, and a few thick tentacles climbed up the boat from the lake. Some distorted light and shadows walked around them, and there seemed to be vague, indistinct whispers in their ears. A witch's hair coiled around her head like a snake. The hair on her back shot out, wanting to strangle an 11-year-old boy wizard. The large strand of hair was like a strong arm, and the boy's tongue was pulled out. The tongue curled around the snake-like hair and secreted a large amount of acid that dissolved the hair. The witch's long hair shrieked, and countless strands of hair stood up like snakes, staring at the boy. The boy's tongue suddenly opened, revealing a spiral of sharp teeth, like that of a lamprey. The atmosphere was very tense, and a fight to the death was about to begin. Chun-Ong, who was standing at the bow of the ship, suddenly turned around and looked at them. The 2 living organs quickly shrank back as if they had seen a ghost and obediently stuck to their master's body, just like ordinary hair and tongues. Chun-Ong nodded in satisfaction, pleased with the results of his teaching. Before he arrived, these black magic students could not even defeat a single red hat. After 5 hours during yesterday's class, he had summoned 50 deep ones, and they were all killed by Germanic and Slavic academies. The students' progress was impressive, and the improvement made Chun-Ong very happy. He decided to lead his students to slay the snake monster when he arrived at Hogwarts. Chapter 783. Harry Potter stood in a line in the front hall of Hogwarts. The professors from each school were directing them to welcome the Durmstrang exchange students. Harry did not have a good impression of the school. Thanks to Malfoy, the school was firmly associated with dark magic in Harry's mind. Don't tell me the students there are all like Malfoys, Harry whispered to Ron. Ron replied in a low voice, "It's a school that only accepts pure-blooded students. I can't imagine hundreds of Malfoys together. It must be a nightmare." Hermione was also eavesdropping on their conversation. Hearing that, she bumped into Ron hard. Ron stumbled and complained to her in a low voice, "What are you doing?" "I'm stopping you from saying anything worse," Hermione scolded. Durmstrang is one of the 3 major schools of magic in Europe. It has a notable reputation in the wizarding world and is also a friendly school to our school. It is recorded in Durmstrang, the Hall of Duels. Although this school teaches dark magic, its students are mostly not prejudiced against muggles and mixed-blood wizards. They learn dark magic only because of tradition. Many Hogwarts seniors have formed sincere friendships with Durmstrang students. You can read about this in the library's Origins of the Triad. Ron grumbled discontentedly until someone next to him stopped him. "Stop it. Something is approaching. It should be the Durmstrang exchange students. Do you hear anything?" Harry listened carefully. A strange sound floated from the darkness, mixed with the sound of waves and inhalation. It was like bubbles passing through a whirlpool of water and sucking into the bottom of a lake. A faint, bone-chilling cold spread. Suddenly, fog rose from the surface of the black lake. It was thin at first, but in the blink of an eye it filled the entire lake. The moonlight in the sky was blocked by the fog. As the fog spread, a faint, graceful singing came from the bottom of the lake. The senior students began to stir. Someone whispered, "Is this the singing of the murlocs in the Black Lake?" Soon a senior student retorted, "The murlocs singing cannot travel out of the water, and the language of the murlocs is not the murlocs." "Sirens, sirens." "The lake," cried Lee Jordan, pointing down at the lake. "Look at the lake." Harry could clearly see the surface of the lake from where he was. Although it was covered by fog, the fog was not so thick this time. Like the morning mist, he could still see more than half of the lake. At this time, the lake water had surged, and the smooth surface of the lake was rippling. A series of bubbles emerged from the center of the lake, followed by the sound of inhalation. The windless lake had set off a 3-foot wave, crashing against the shore. In the center of the lake, a huge whirlpool was forming. The whirlpool stirred the bottom of the lake, and Harry could see a frightened murloc rising from the side of the whirlpool. The monster had sharp teeth, and its coral-like hair clung tightly to its face. It seemed to be struggling to get out of the whirlpool, reaching out its claws towards the Hogwarts students. But as if someone was pulling it down, it was dragged down and disappeared into the water. "Don't worry, murlocs won't drown in the water." Pomona looked at the nervous faces of the students and comforted them with a smile. But Harry heard it. Ever since he entered the spirit world through the spell on the Golden Sun Sutra, he found that his senses had changed beyond that of a normal wizard. He could hear the sound of the water crashing against the wood under the waves of the lake. It was as if there was a ship hidden there. The boards and keel of the ship creaked, and then Harry heard the sound of bones breaking. In his mind, there seemed to be a mass of flesh with bones and scales torn between the keel and ribs of the ship. The tentacles of the giant squid in the Black Lake lashed out from the surface of the lake. He could see that it was extremely frightened, and it disappeared at the edge of the whirlpool as if it was running for its life. A few Gridairos screamed. At this time, even the professors felt uneasy. Just as the Hogwarts students were in an uproar, the bow of a large ship broke out from the water like a great white shark peering at the surface of the sea. Then the rest of the ship rushed out of the lake like a flying boat, bringing with it a turbulent mist and violent waves. It was a black Spanish galleon, and just like that, it rushed into everyone's eyes. "Cool!" The Weasley twins were the first to react and shouted. Harry felt a slight pain from the scar on his forehead and even fear. The ship seemed to be dead. It sailed menacingly towards Hogwarts Castle, but there was not a single light on the ship in the dark. A blurry figure stood at the bow of the ship. He was thin and wore a black robe, and only a blurry shadow could be seen in the dark. The mist had dispersed, and the moonlight shone on the ship. It looked very strange, like a skeleton, like a ship that was being repaired. With the help of the moonlight, Harry could finally see the situation on the deck. The Durmstrang students who came for the exchange were standing quietly on the deck, just behind the shadow at the bow of the ship. They were silent, and under the moonlight they looked like dead people. Harry felt that the scene was very strange. The Durmstrang wizards on the deck. To be fair, they were like ghosts. After a while, they heard the splashing of the anchor and the creaking of the planks. It was a sound that Harry was familiar with. He saw the broken ghost ship open up, revealing the rotten keel of the ship. The keel and the ribs made a creaking sound like a door axle without oil. Harry saw the bottom of the ship open up like a huge mouth, revealing a huge crack. The broken deck and keel were like jagged teeth. Harry took a step back in horror and stared at the dark maw. He wondered if this was the maw that had swallowed something, and the sound of flesh and bone rubbing against what came back to his ears. Creak, creak. The people on the ship had disembarked. They were not as scary as Harry had imagined, like monsters. On the surface, they looked like a group of ordinary wizards. They were tall, and generally similar to Harry's strongest classmates. Compared to them, Harry looked like a little chicken. The key was that the girls seemed to be the same. They were taller, but not as huge. Chapter 784. The young Oriental professor walked up the slope and greeted Dumbledore enthusiastically. "Headmaster Dumbledore, I'm Durmstrang's new black magic professor, Ong Chin," Dumbledore nodded and replied. "Welcome, friends of Durmstrang. Hogwarts welcomes every friend who comes from afar. May the young wizards of Durmstrang gain friendship here. And knowledge," Chunong added with a smile. Dumbledore laughed. "Yes, and knowledge. Chin." Dumbledore turned around and asked in a low voice, "Can I call you that? I remember that you Asians often have your first name at the end, so I should call you Chinong." Chinong nodded. Dumbledore smiled and said, "I know this secret from the pronunciation of your name. One of my students is a third year witch from Ravenclaw. She should be like you are both Chinese." Chun-Ong nodded slightly, but in his heart he was thinking, "Has this old bee really targeted me? Is Professor Igor okay?" Dumbledore asked. "He asked someone to contact me about the exchange between our two schools, but he didn't show up himself. This time I thought he would come in person." "Headmaster Igor is not very convenient," Chinong replied. "You should know that there are rumors that Voldemort is back. The Death Eaters are moving around and Professor Igor is very uneasy, so he reduced his movements. The Death Eaters hate him to the core, but London is the Death Eaters' headquarters. So, Headmaster Dumbledore, you definitely won't see him step into London." Dumbledore stopped and looked at Chun-Ang's calm expression, his eyes a little deep. He pondered for a while, like an old man, as if he was recalling something. After a long time he sighed and said, "Igor. Professor Igor had a bad experience in the past, but he made the right choice later. He should have come here." Chin-Ong said faintly, "People always have to take responsibility for what they have done. No one can escape from this." Dumbledore invited the Durmstrang students to live in the Hogwarts dormitory, but Chin-Ong politely refused. He transformed the boat they came from into a villa and brought the Durmstrang students to live in it. Harry heard Professor McGonagall whispering to Dumbledore, "That's a very difficult transformation spell." She seemed to notice that Harry was listening and added, "The bigger the object, the more magic it takes. Few people can make a house in one breath, very few." Dumbledore laughed softly and said, "Professor Maliva is one of them. I can do it, but the difficulty of the spell has nothing to do with the amount of magic power consumed." Professor Mag was silent for a long time before he added, "Without the help of the magic text and potions, I won't be able to hold on for long." Before Harry could hear the rest of the conversation, Ron whispered, "I saw Whittle-Crumb." "Who?" Harry asked. "Whittle-Crumb, the new ball seeker for the Bulgarian national Quidditch team. People say he is the most talented ball seeker in the history of the Bulgarian team, the star of the future. Although he is not that famous now, he is widely praised. Maybe I can get an autograph from him," Ron said. Ron sighed. "Their red robes are much more conspicuous than our black robes." When they went down for breakfast the next day, they found that the hall had been decorated overnight. Huge silk banners hung down from the wall, and on the left were the representative colors of Hogwarts: a red golden lion, a green silver snake, a blue golden eagle, and a yellow black badger, all surrounding Hogwarts to form the destruction of Hogwarts. On the right was the emblem of the Byzantine Empire, which represented Slavic and Northern Europe, and even Germany. Its wings were spread out, and below it was the skull of a goat, which represented black magic. Together, they formed the emblem of Durmstrang. Harry and Ron saw the exchange students from Durmstrang at Gryffindor's table. They had taken off their heavy leather coats, revealing the blood-red robes underneath. They would greet Gryffindor students warmly when they saw them. But somehow Harry could not forget their pale and lifeless faces when he saw them on the ship. Chunong and Dumbledore sat at the staff table. Chunong had met most of the Hogwarts professors yesterday, but because it was at night, they only met briefly. Chunong had to bring the students back. This time, sitting at the staff table with most of the Hogwarts professors, he could have more in-depth contact. The Lord God's mission was completed last night when he met Dumbledore. It seemed that the Lord God did not have any specific requirements on how to enter Hogwarts. Even if Chunong was just an exchange professor from another school, he had reached the minimum requirement to complete the mission. On his left was Dumbledore, and on his right was the old bat Snape. Although Chunong wasn't too particular about it, but was it really appropriate for Dumbledore, this old bee, to arrange a bat that liked to spit venom and didn't care about his appearance beside a guest? Hermione noticed this problem. She lowered her head and whispered to Harry, "That Durmstrang professor seems a little uncomfortable sitting next to Professor Snape." Ron said gloatingly, "No one would want to sit next to that greasy old bat." Dumbledore seemed to have noticed the staff in the hands of the Durmstrang exchange students. It was as tall as Durmstrang's chest and as thick as a duck's egg. It was actually a stick, and it had the luster of a log. This thing was not light. It was actually made of iron birch. This wood was used in the Muggle world to replace steel to make ball bearings. It was a good product from the cold Siberian highlands. Dumbledore even noticed that the males of Durmstrang had a thick layer of calluses between their thumbs and forefingers. Even the witches, under their youthful and beautiful appearance, had thick, muscular arms and legs. Especially their leader, Wicked Crumb. The way he walked while holding a stick would make any Muggle who knew Eastern martial arts exclaim in admiration. He must have practiced the art of the stick to his bones. Dumbledore did not have any martial arts attainments, but he was no fool. Of course, he could see the ferocity of these Slavic barbarians. He asked in a low voice, "Professor Chin, I wonder what the Durmstrang students are holding in their hands." Chunong smiled. "That's their new wands. Durmstrang is launching a reform campaign. We noticed that the wizards' reliance on wands may be abnormal. Most wizards now can't use any magic without the help of wands. You have to know that wands were originally just an auxiliary tool. We realized that this tool may be suppressing the wizards' potential for development. Especially when young wizards are growing up, the help of wands may cause dependence, leading to a decline in the wizard's ability to control and stabilize magic. This made us very worried. It is worth noting that only European wizards use wands. The Wagadu School of Magic in Africa does not use wands. Instead, they use hand gestures to stabilize the magic power of their spells. This may be directly related to the amazing talent of the Wagadu School of Magic in Transfiguration. According to our tracking research, the students of Wagadu are able to perform well in spells that require control and stability. The reason why this problem has not been discovered is that they do not use wands to cast spells. Therefore, when it comes to spells that require control, their performance is mediocre compared to ours who use wands. But when it comes to spells that cannot be performed with the help of wands, such as the self-transformation spell, Animagus, this can be clearly seen. The recent performance at the International Animagus Conference is proof of this. Those 14-year-old wizards and witches have frightened the adult magi in Europe. This is worth our attention. Dumbledore's face became serious. He whispered, "This is a valuable discovery." But the connection between wizards and wands is very complicated. Every wand and wizard is closely connected. First, there is mutual attraction, then mutual adaptation. In this process, the wand learns from the wizard, and the wizard also learns from the wand. Yes, Chunong nodded and said, "Without the guidance of the wand, when the wizard grows, the turbulence of magic will not be eased." We have noticed that this process of communication between the wand and the wizard plays an important role in the growth of the wizard's magic power. So while we keep the traditional wand of the students, We are also looking for a replacement." Dumbledore's eyes were bright, and he asked curiously, "Have you found it?" Chenong nodded and said, "Found it, the same magic material that is suitable for communication with wizards, gems, various colored crystals, and different gems. They also have the same complex personality as the wand, and are very suitable for mutual attraction with wizards. We use the most stubborn wood, iron birch, as the material for the wand. Its characteristics are well known for its stubbornness and stability. This can maintain the role of magic power dissipation in the wand and train the control of magic power in casting spells. Then inlay a gem at the head of the wand, replacing the ability of the wand and the wizard to learn and communicate with each other with the gem. Finally, use hand gestures to assist in casting spells. Those complex spells that require the help of the wand will be cast with a combination of hand gestures and wand. For this, we specially developed a set of one-handed hand gestures to accompany this kind of wand casting." Chapter 785. Chun-Ong and Dumbledore exchanged their views on the way to stabilize magic. The two of them were probably the most knowledgeable people in the magic world. There were very few who could compare to them. Voldemort might be one, and if Nicolim wasn't dead, he would be another. Gellert Grindelwald, who was currently locked up in Numungard, could also be one. The rest, even the Hogwarts professors, couldn't join in their conversation. At the start, Snape, who was sitting next to Chenong, could still listen with a gloomy face. However, when Chenong and Dumbledore talked about the magic text and sound incantations in stabilizing the magic power of the wizard's bloodline, and the origins of the ancient magic text in the development of modern magic spells, his face became as ugly as a dead man's. Professor Mag, who was sitting further away, had a serious expression from the start. However, the disbelief in her eyes when she looked at Chun-Ong betrayed her. She was also shocked by the knowledge of this unknown Eastern professor, and even found it hard to accept. In fact, this was also the process of Chin-Ong and Dumbledore testing each other. It was only when the students from the 4 academies and Demstrong arrived at the dining table that Dumbledore stopped and smiled. "Ladies, gentlemen, ghosts, and guests of Demstrong, good morning! Students from the 2nd and 3rd years. Today's classes will be temporarily suspended. We will be starting an exchange activity with the guests of Demstrong. In the next month, Professor Chenong will be opening a new course for all of you. It's in the style of Demstrong dual course. Now, let us welcome Professor Chenong." Harry looked at Chenong in shock. Ron, who was sitting next to him, was also stunned by this news. He exclaimed, "That's amazing!" The whole of Hogwarts was in an uproar. Harry heard the seniors of Gryffindor whispering to each other, "How is this possible? Is the principal crazy? Why would Dumbledore agree to such a ridiculous thing?" Only Malfoy laughed proudly. There were even cheers from Slytherin's seats. Harry asked Ron, puzzled, "What happened? Why is everyone reacting like this?" Ron could not hide his surprise, but there was also a hint of nervousness and excitement on his face. He replied, "Demstrong's specialty is black magic. Dual class is, in fact, a black magic dual class. This means that we will be learning true black magic with great destructive power." Harry did not react, but Hermione, who was next to him, almost jumped up. She shouted, "How can Headmaster Dumbledore allow such a ridiculous thing? Teaching dark magic is illegal. This is—" Ron hesitated. "It is illegal to teach the unforgivable curse, but most black magic has no restrictions. Otherwise, Demstrong would not have been able to operate it legally for so long. In fact, teaching unforgivable curses is illegal, but allowing students to study by themselves and read magic books is legal." Hermione shouted angrily at him, "I will report this to the Ministry of Magic. If they still have a bit of rationality, they will stop Headmaster Dumbledore's crazy actions." At this moment, cheers and applause came from Slytherin seats. The exchange students from Demstrong also jumped up and cheered. However, the other 3 academies were whispering to each other, producing a buzzing sound like a swarm of bees. Chenong stood up. Facing such a scene, he did not feel awkward at all. Instead, he announced, "Here, everyone can learn methods to carry out their will and knowledge that is closer to the truth. Many people think that I will teach you some dark and terrifying knowledge. But in fact, I think it is more important to teach you how to find light in the darkness and how to control your ambitions and desires. In fact, black magic is not scary. Uncontrolled black magic is scary. I know that many of you want to become aurors and become clerks in the Ministry of Magic. Then you must properly grasp this opportunity. This is the only chance for you to receive black magic education 5 years in advance. Although it's only for a month, the students of Hogwarts will have lessons with the students of Durmstrang. You will receive real training from me and learn the greatest and most basic skills of a wizard. It's like using magic to carry out your own will. You will learn how wizards resolve conflicts when they are irreconcilable. That is a choice between life and death." At this moment, Gidro Lockhart impatiently jumped out. He said loudly, when Professor Dumbledore asked me for my opinion, I said that I completely agree with Durmstrang's suggestion. You have all studied under a top-notch master of black magic. As long as you can learn a bit of my ability, black magic will not be able to withstand a single blow from you. Just like the countless times I have fought against evil creatures and black wizards. You can read the details in my book. Next, I will demonstrate the rules and etiquette of a duel with Professor Chenong. He told me that this will be helpful for your future studies and understanding of black magic defense. So, under his request, I will show you how to defend against top black magic. I do not want the guests of Durmstrang to worry, so when my spell hits your professor, do not scream. Ron whispered to Harry, I don't think Durmstrang's black magic professor is worse than a Cornish elf. I hope that when our professor looks at him, he will not scream like a little girl. Not far away, a Durmstrang exchange student whispered to the side, May Zathos watch over him. Other than that, I really cannot think of how he can defend against our professor's black magic. Harry also heard a Durmstrang exchange student ask, Will the professor kill him? That is the best ending he can imagine. Someone replied with a sneer. Hermione heard it too. She turned to Harry and said, How can they say that about Professor Lockhart? That is so rude. Harry felt in his heart that the Durmstrang exchange students were right, but he could not say anything in front of Hermione. At this time, the senior students had finished eating and were ready to go to class. Harry and the rest were asked to stay in the hall. He saw Chenong wave his wand, and the long dining table in the middle of the hall disappeared. In its place was a shining golden stage against the wall. The magical dome above their heads was clear, and the sun was just right. Chapter 786. Chenong and Lockhart faced each other and bowed. Lockhart explained, This is the duel etiquette of the magic world. As you can see, we will raise our wands in front of our chests and count to 3 before casting a spell on each other. Of course, children, don't be nervous. I won't harm your professor. Thank you for your explanation, Professor Lockhart. Chenong nodded. I thought this was my job. As soon as he said this, the exchange students from Durmstrang laughed loudly without any malice. Harry and the others also laughed, but it was hard to say whether these boys had any malicious intent towards Lockhart. A formal duel between wizards has a strict etiquette procedure. Before the duel starts, both sides have to raise their wands in front of them to show respect or bow to each other. Afterwards, both sides will walk to opposite ends of the field and begin the duel. In a regular duel, both sides have to use a certain amount of magic to attack each other until one side loses his wand and loses the ability to retaliate. However, in the magic world, there is a tradition that has never been mentioned by law, nor has it been approved or acknowledged. When the conflict between you and a wizard reaches an irreconcilable degree, you can reach a duel that ends in death. Of course, I have to emphasize that this duel is completely illegal. However, if both sides are pure bloods and fight to the death for the sake of their family's honor, all witnesses will maintain a tacit understanding. The loser will not appeal to the magic world, and the victor will also maintain his silence. This is because this is the honor of pure bloods. The students from Slytherin and Durmstrang cheered loudly. Malfoy was even more excited as he shouted, "The honor of pure bloods!" While the other three academies maintained their silence, the exchange students from Slytherin and Durmstrang enthusiastically cheered. Although Slytherin didn't have any strict requirements, almost all of the students in this academy were pure bloods, or were pure bloods like Voldemort. As for Durmstrang students, they had to be pure bloods. The professors of Hogwarts were silent. This sensitive topic obviously made them very uncomfortable. Here, I will demonstrate an ancient contract spell, Dual Oath. Chun-Ong slightly shook his wand, and a silver ray of light shot out from the tip of his wand towards the space between the two dueling people. A dual vow is a type of magic contract, or rather, a spell of secrecy. Magic contracts are one of the more important parts of ancient magic spells. They have been diluted in modern magic, but they have not disappeared. Instead, they form the elements of magic spells and form the foundation of modern magic. Most of the contracts in magic spells play a very important role. The flying incantation contains the concept of property rights. If an item has a property right contract with someone else, then if you can't get the owner's approval, the flying incantation won't work. This is also why the flying incantation can only fly over items that belong to you. Of course, if your level of magic incantation is high enough, you can use the power of the contract between you and the owner to establish a temporary property right contract with the item when the owner approves you and summon the target item. This is an example of the widespread use of contract magic in modern magic. Another spell with more obvious characteristics of contract magic is the famous incantation. It is a good helper for wizards to keep secrets, the incantation of loyalty. The dual oath that I will cast now is an ancient spell. It was widely used in the Middle Ages. At that time, the world of magic had not yet formed a complete and reliable law and law enforcement system. Wizards loved to duel because duels were an important way for them to resolve conflicts and problems. It was a dark and bloody era. The story of the three brothers in the poetry urn and peace stories reflected this. The one who had the old wand was invincible in duels, which attracted the jealousy of the dark wizards. In the end, he died in a despicable murder. In that era, pure-blooded families had not yet formed. Everything was chaotic and lawless. When wizards dueled, there was no judge or witness. There were even many wizards who despicably broke their vows during duels, causing a lot of chaos. In that era, when oath magic was still developing, someone created this spell, Dual Oath. Through the power of magic, it prevents the duelists from breaking the rules of duel and performing evil deeds like sneak attacks. Now, Professor Lockhart, please demonstrate. Chun-Ong raised his wand and gestured to Lockhart. Lockhart was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He could only tentatively release a magic signature on the silver light above their heads. The silver light floating above their heads exploded and transformed into a pair of crossed silver wands under the dome of the auditorium, signaling that the dual contract was successfully established. 1, 2, 3. Both of them waved their wands at the same time, but just as Lockhart uttered a vowel sound from his throat, he was struck by a green ray and petrified on the spot. Chun-Ong retracted his wand as if he wasn't the one who got rid of Lockhart with a flick of his wand. The expressions of the Hogwarts professors changed. Chun-Ong didn't even make a sound. He only made a simple gesture and released a rather strong black magic. Seeing that Professor Mag's mouth was agape as if he was going to protest, Chun-Ong explained, Professor Lockhart was only hit by the petrification ray. I've weakened the power of this magic, so Professor Lockhart will recover on his own in less than half an hour. So, you don't have to worry about him. He pointed at Hermione, who had already jumped up. Hermione was so agitated that her cheeks were red. She kept protesting. How could he do that? Ron rolled his eyes at the side and mumbled, "This is a duel, and Lockhart is useless." The result was already expected. Harry, who was at the side, kept nodding. The guys from Slytherin and Gryffindor had a rare rapport, and they all burst into laughter. Lockhart had only been here for 2 to 3 weeks, and all the guys in Hogwarts were already annoyed by him. That was considered a skill. However, there were many fangirls among the girls here. They were still resentful when they saw Lockhart being defeated so easily by Chunong ignored the laughter and grumbling below. As the organizer and researcher of a large-scale teaching and witches bloodline research experiment, he really didn't care what these test subjects were thinking. Chunong calmly said, "Who knows why Professor Lockhart couldn't resist at all just now?" Chunong didn't stand on ceremony with Lockhart and directly said, "And what's the most important factor in a magic duel?" A Demstrong exchange student stood up and answered, "It's speed." "Well said. Demstrong, 5 points." Chunong said with a smile, "If we participate in the school cup too, why not?" Dumbledore laughed. He stood up and waved his wand, and a new point representing the school rose from the hourglass of the Hogwarts School Cup. Without a doubt, that was Demstrong's point. Dumbledore said with a smile, "Hogwarts welcomes all who come here to learn knowledge with a broad heart. We are not afraid of any competition, and we welcome every friend." Chunong nodded and continued, "That's right, the most important factor in a magic duel is speed. When the countdown stops, whoever is the first to cast a spell will have half a foot in his hand." "Why half a foot? Can anyone answer that?" Another exchange student from Durmstrang stood up. "Counter magic. Professor, magic counter." Chunong repeated. Without waiting for him to say anything, Dumbledore raised his hand and laughed. 10 points for Demstrong! In a magic duel, a defensive spell will produce a defensive effect against an offensive spell. In other words, an offensive spell will only be effective if the offensive spell breaks through the defense of the defensive spell. However, the magic defense of a defensive spell is not universal. For example, Armor Curse is more effective against blunt weapons, sharp weapons, Disarm Curse, and physical Poltergeist Curse. However, against Fire Curse, Soul Reaver Curse, and Life Reaper Curse, the effect will be much weaker, and it is extremely easy to break through. However, it is more effective against Fire Curse than Armor Curse. But what if 2 dueling wizards cast an attack spell on each other at the same time? What effect will it produce? Without waiting for anyone to answer, Chunong explained himself. It will produce magic counter, which means that before your opponent's offensive spell is broken, your spell will not be able to take effect. Both parties will fall into a battle of magic and willpower until one party overwhelms the other. The reason for the magic counter might be due to the exclusivity of magic power. In a force field, one magic power cannot bypass another magic power to exert its effect. Therefore, in a magic duel, when speed is not the primary factor, the second decisive factor, the strength of the spell, is largely dependent on the strength of the wizard's magic power and also has a considerable relationship with the strength of the wizard's willpower. Just now, I defeated Professor Harlot with speed. Who can say why Professor Harlot was already hit by my spell when he was still chanting? This time, even Durmstrang students couldn't answer, because Chunong hadn't taught them yet. Seeing the silence, Snape coldly glanced at the Hogwarts students and said in an icy tone, "Professor Chunong, I'm afraid these little idiots won't be able to understand the subtleties of your magic. How much more can you expect from them?" Chunong smiled. "They just haven't learned it yet." "Spell delay." Chunong said, "This is the supreme magic skill related to speed in this trick. It allows you to hold a spell in place and maintain it in a state that is about to be activated. As for how long the spell can be maintained, it depends on your magic, technique, and the strength of the spell." Before the duel started, I had already completed the Petrification Ray spell, So when Professor Harlot was still chanting, my spell had already hit him. The students of Durmstrang and Slytherin stood up and applauded. Hermione was furious. If not for Ron holding her back, she would have stood up and started spouting nonsense. Chun-Ong motioned for everyone to calm down and continued. As for the second trick, how did I prepare a black magic spell under the eyes of you and Professor Harlot? That's a supreme magic skill related to stealth. Silent spell. Brilliant wizards can discard their wands and cast spells without using incantations. Another trick is that you can use hand gestures instead of wands to assist in casting spells. Because of the proliferation of wands, many wizards have already lost their vigilance against enemies who aren't wand-wielding enemies. You can secretly complete a spell under their eyes when you're disarmed and lose your wand, just like what I did just now. This time, the cheers were even more enthusiastic. This time, students from other academies started to cheer for Chun-Ong. There were Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and even Gryffindor. Ron even saw his twin brothers applauding for Chun-Ong. I came to Hogwarts because of the school's request that I not teach black magic. But if you ask me what you can learn here, then I will say there are many. Dueling is a subject, an art that a wizard must master. It is a knowledge that can be studied for a lifetime. It is strength, wisdom, courage, and perseverance. Everyone can find what they want to learn here. Dueling is a wizard's most basic ability. It is the ultimate standard to test a wizard's magic. If you fail the general or ultimate wizard examination, you will only lose your future. But if you are unlucky to fail a wizard duel, you may lose everything. The true difference between an outstanding wizard and a mediocre wizard is their extraordinary dueling ability. This is my advice to you. In my class, I will not teach you how to cast spells or how to pronounce the incantations. I will only bring you to truly understand magic and enter the world of magic. Learning the knowledge that you have never heard from other professors and supreme magical techniques is only one of them. It is only the beginning. Next, I will ask you, are you ready? Are you ready to enter that magical world with me? I am ready. Malfoy stood up and said excitedly, Professor, in Hogwarts, I have seen the true meaning of magic from you for the first time. This is more shocking than anything I have ever learned. Hearing his words, the Hogwarts professors' faces turned ugly. Even Snape looked like a dead man. Of course, he was always like that. The Slytherin students were a little excited. They were not favored by Dumbledore, although it was not obvious on the surface. After the arrival of the Savior, this feeling was somewhat obvious. The Ravenclaw students were also a little noisy. They had the best grades and respected knowledge. Chun-Ang's knowledge had convinced some of the higher grades. At least, most of the Ravenclaw students would attend his class seriously. Chapter 787. Chun-Ong was busy teaching, and the poor Lockhart was still frozen there. His popularity in Hogwarts was extremely bad. After so long, not a single professor went to see him. In the end, Professor Mag had to take into consideration the student's authority as a professor. So he walked up to Lockhart, pulled out his magic wand, and cast a spell-stop spell on him. However, it didn't have any effect. Lockhart was still frozen on the spot, as if he was dead. Chun-Ong walked over and said, Professor, it's useless to do that. The petrification caused by the petrification ray isn't the state, but the result. A spell like Spell Stop that dispels the status of the curse can't remove it, just like it can't remove the damage caused by the shadowless divine blade or the burns caused by the fire curse. The inspiration for the petrification curse came from the snake monster's gaze, so the removal of the curse is also related to that. The potion made from the mandrake grass can cure the stiffness caused by the petrification ray. But you have to take note that the permanent petrification ray will cause the lung muscles to stiffen. Usually, the person will die from respiratory failure within 2 minutes. It's a very dangerous curse. Chun-Ong explained softly. At the same time, his hands didn't stop moving. He cast a counterspell to wake Lockhart up slowly. At the same time, his left hand completed a hidden gesture. This was a modification spell that could make one forget everything, a golden millet dream. Its effect was to blur the memory of the person who was cast the spell, resulting in a blurry memory after waking up from the dream. Lockhart would have a vague memory of this period of time, but the part that Chinong didn't want him to remember would be as blurry as a dream. Professor Lockhart gave us a very good demonstration. Chinong helped Lockhart up. When he was still in a daze, he patted his shoulder and loudly said, "Professor Lockhart isn't a small wizard like you. It's very easy for him to stop me. He was only cooperating with me just now to demonstrate to everyone what we have to pay attention to in a magic duel." Lockhart was hit by a powerful black magic and was still suffering from some side effects. He was clearly a little dazed, but he had an almost instinctive conditioned reflex when it came to protecting his own reputation. Yes, a demonstration is a good idea. When Professor Chen Ong told me to cooperate with him to complete the demonstration for this dual class, I took the initiative to suggest that I show you the complete dual procedure, including defeat. It would be easy for me to win, but it would put too much pressure on Professor Chen Ong. I mean, the person you should be familiar with is him. That's why I made such a request. I don't want to steal his limelight. Lockhart gradually came to his senses, and his logic became clearer. His other abilities might be a mess, but his eloquence wasn't bad. Looking at the expressions of his fangirls, Harlot's performance had deceived more than half of his admirers and followers. Of course, Harry and the others wouldn't believe him, but it seemed like Hermione did. This showed that IQ and idolatry didn't have much to do with each other. Any woman could become a brainless fan. They weren't fans because they were brainless, but because they were fans because they were brainless. Of course, there were some who were fans and brainless, but these types of people could be said to be the shame of humanity. Every time one of them appeared, it would make people's eyes light up, and they would be tempted to give them a Darwin Award. Most of Lockhart's glorious experiences in his book were obtained through deception, but there were two things that were real. One was his exquisite writing style, and the other was his incantation that was impossible to defend against. At this moment, Lockhart was using his silver tongue to brag about the story of his duel with a wizard in the snowy mountains of Tibet. In the end, Chinong had no choice but to interrupt him. If he were to continue, this dual class would become a report on Lockhart's glorious deeds. He cleared his throat and said in a low voice, "Professor Lockhart, it's getting late." Although Lockhart's memories from earlier were blurry, his fear of Chinong, or rather, his lingering fear, was still there. Seeing this, he hurriedly interrupted himself and said, "All right, now I'll split you into groups of 2. Professor Chin, please make the decision." Lockhart put a skinny Durmstrang student and Ron together. Harry was anxious to death because he kept seeing the Durmstrang student grinning, revealing 2 canine fangs like a viper. His tongue was so long that it almost touched the bridge of his nose. At a certain moment, when it brushed past Harry's eyes, Harry inadvertently saw that the Durmstrang student's pupils had become vertical like those of a feline or a cold-blooded animal. His cold pupils were filled with cruelty and coldness, sending chills down one's spine. However, it was only a phenomenon that he observed for a moment. When he focused his attention and looked carefully, the student smiled at him, and his appearance had returned to normal. What happened in that moment seemed like an illusion, but Harry swore that he saw it clearly. "Yakov," Chen Ong called out to the Durmstrang student, "why don't you go up and demonstrate for us?" Yakov agreed with a smile and dragged the iron birch wand that was taller than him up the stage. Ron was also a little excited, but also a little hesitant as he looked at the Hogwarts professors on the stage. He saw Snape's familiar cold gaze and Dumbledore's warm smile as he looked at him encouragingly. Ron was just about to take a step forward when he was hugged by Lockhart. "Great. You're Harry's friend, right? Don't be afraid. With my guidance, the youngest defense against dark magic professor in Hogwarts, you'll be invincible. Listen well. Do as I usually teach you." "What do you usually teach us?" Ron was in despair. "You didn't teach us anything. You can't even deal with the little elves from Cornshire." He really wanted to shout these words out, but seeing Snape's viper-like expression, he tactfully shut his mouth. In reality, Snape, who loathed Lockhart, wouldn't necessarily care about this. However, it would depend on whether Snape loathed Lockhart more, or the trio more. The biggest possibility was that Snape would humiliate Lockhart and punish Ron harshly. Ron lifted his old wand and stood on the stage as if he was walking on thin ice. The two bowed to each other and then walked back to the duel position. After Lockhart shouted 3, 2, 1, Yakov roared and rushed up with his wand. Lockhart paled at the side, and Ron was so scared that he didn't know what to do. Hence, Lockhart warned loudly, "Disarm incantation is only allowed. Stop there and chant the incantation." Yakov raised his spear like a dragon and swung his wand at Ron's face. Only then did Ron start to chant the incantation, and thus, before he could finish chanting, he was hit heavily on the cheek. His head tilted to the side and he fainted. Lockhart rushed up in a hurry. He walked up to the duel stage and raised his wand to disarm Yakov. But he made a mistake. He walked too close. Yakov raised his wand. It was made of iron birchwood and was as thick as an egg. The body of the wand was both hard and flexible. While retaining the hardness of iron birch wood that was comparable to steel, it also had the unique flexibility of wood, and its ability to channel magic was also very strong. Yakov's magic flowed smoothly in the wand. This handy wand had already established a trace of connection with Yakov when he was resisting the invasion of the evil god's consciousness. Yakov seemed to have gone mad. His eyes were bloodshot, and he fell into a state of madness. But with the help of the wand in his hand, he managed to maintain a trace of clarity. Such a state of madness on the outside and calmness on the inside coincided with the profound martial art that Chinong had imparted to him. Hence, the magic wand carried a strong gust of wind as it slashed towards Lockhart's face. Lockhart's face was smashed by the wand. He covered his mouth in pain, trying to protect his big teeth. But after being hit on the face, he couldn't use the incantation anymore, and Yakov wouldn't let go of this opportunity. He used his right hand to lift Lockhart's lower body, and his left hand responded with a punch, beating Lockhart until he fainted. It was as if he had used the forgetting incantation, forgetting everything physics. Chapter 788. Oh my God! Professor Mag raised his magic wand to stop Yakov, but Yakov was as brave as a dragon. He grabbed a Gryffindor boy at the side. It happened to be Harry's roommate, Dean Thomas. This poor dark-skinned boy was lifted up by the thin and weak Yakov, who used him to block Professor Mag's disarming spell. He held Dean in front of him like he was holding a shield and rushed towards Professor Mag. The Hogwarts students screamed and ran in all directions, but the Durmstrang exchange students only laughed on the spot. They gloated and said, "Yakov is going crazy again. Don't tell me he dreamt of Sada Higra again yesterday. Poor Yakov, he has been getting more and more haggard recently. I'm afraid he will be selected by the professor for training." Training? I'm afraid he won't live until then. Yakov, if you continue to fool around like this, you might get special guidance. Someone shouted at Yakov, but he had obviously fallen into a trance, so he didn't hear anything. He threw Dean at Professor Mag. That not-so-small body was thrown up high like a rag sack by Yakov's frail body and smashed at Professor Mag. Snape shot a disarming spell at him, but it was deftly deflected by Yakov. Professor Mag couldn't use powerful magic and had to split his attention to protect Dean, so Yakov had already rushed in front of him. He swung his magic wand around like Gandalf. With a roar, the spiritual and magic contamination from the evil god of chaos made him carry an evil aura. A roar could intimidate people's spirit, and it was equivalent to a halo of fear. It had to do a willpower check on the people around him. Although Professor Mag was experienced and knowledgeable as a professor, he was bound by his students' limitations. Furthermore, he was caught off guard and was struck by the battle roar at close range. As a result, he was slightly slower in his waving of his magic wand, and that slight delay almost caused him to fail miserably. The reason why he said he almost failed was because Chun-Ong finally came to the rescue. Yakov froze on the spot. His iron birch magic wand that was as thick as an egg was only a needle's length away from Professor Mag's head. Professor Mag had even closed his eyes, and the disarming spell in his hand was only a millimeter away from being activated. It looked like a scene of mutual destruction, but Chun-Ong knew that if he didn't stop Yakov, Yakov would at most have a headache, and Professor Mag would probably lose his memory. His thick nerves, which had been tested by the evil god for a long time, couldn't be destroyed by a disarming spell. Furthermore, Yakov had the enhancement of Berserk now, so his spirit resistance was already at an insane level. Chun-Ong kept his wand. Yakov, who had been hit by the Petrify spell, was already stiff. This time it wasn't a spell that was weakened by hand gestures. If Chun-Ong didn't dispel the spell, Yakov would have to stand there for a long time for the effect of the spell to dissipate naturally. Professor Mag opened his eyes, trembling. When he saw Yakov's battle-crazed expression, he almost released the disarming spell that he had prepared earlier. He froze there, glaring like a diamond, but his small body was bursting with powerful energy. Because he was hit by the Petrify spell while moving, Yakov's body was like a drawn bow, full of strength and tension. Chun-Ang's expression was solemn, and the Hogwarts professor's expressions weren't good either. This time, Hogwarts had lost a lot of face. In a wizard's duel, one of their professors was knocked down by a Durmstrang student, and they almost lost a second one. Of course, they didn't have to be so conflicted. They had Voldemort as a scapegoat. Last time, his terrorist attack was ended by a baby, and then, in the future, he fell again in a duel with a Hogwarts student. This time he gave it his all, and these two were the same person. Voldemort was the most humiliating one. Because of this, his underlings had no choice but to brag about the myth of a messiah. Because if there wasn't a messiah halo, then their boss would have a nemesis that smelled like milk. Snape once again looked at Lockhart, who was lying on the ground, with disgust. This person was a disgrace to Hogwarts. After Professor Mag woke up, he said in a trembling voice, "I've never seen such a ridiculous scene. A student publicly attacked a professor in front of the professors, and twice." Snape said impatiently, "But he almost did it. That's what's ridiculous, isn't it?" Snape, who had a typical dark wizard's personality, obviously didn't think this was something to write home about. To him, Professor Mag had almost been successfully attacked by a junior student. Although she had her reasons for holding back, this was obviously not the student's humiliation, but Professor Mag's humiliation. She should hide in her dormitory and reflect on herself. And Professor Mag obviously had the personality of a traditional, pious old lady teacher, old-fashioned, concerned about etiquette and tradition, and strict with her students. She would show mercy to her students, like how she did when she faced Yakov's attack, but she would also tremble with anger at this kind of behavior. To Snape, no matter if it was a student or a professor, the most important thing to them was a wizard. Wizards were great because of magic and power, and to Professor Mag, no matter how powerful her students were, the most important thing between them was the teacher-student relationship. A student dared to attack a professor. This was simply lawless. Professor Mag glared at Snape angrily and turned to Chun-Ong. "Professor Chun-Ong, what happened this time? I cannot tolerate it. You have to deal with this student who attacked the professor." Chun-Ong explained, "Yakov's mental state is unstable. His magic is growing too fast, and it's pressuring his brain. It's my fault this time. I shouldn't have ignored his mental state and allowed him to participate in the duel. We can't push the responsibility to a student with mental problems. For this incident, Demstrand will deduct 50 points. He turned to the exchange students and said, "We are a group. We should take responsibility together." The exchange students from Demstrand stood behind Chun-Ong silently. They seemed to be using their silence to express their attitude, which shocked the Hogwarts students at the side. Harry thought silently, although the exchange students from Demstrand look very arrogant. Their unity is worth learning from. The truth was actually in the minds of the Demstrand students. These people thought, silently, what are these points for? It doesn't seem to be very important when the professor says that we should remain silent. Otherwise, he will make us shut up forever. Yakov, my good brother, we're safe with you this time. I hope you can survive the professor's training with a clear mind. What we can do is to buy time for you and preserve your memory before the professor comes looking for you. Otherwise, your memory will be messed up and you won't recognize anyone after you go crazy. Professor Mag was also convinced by Chanong, but she was still very dissatisfied with Chanong. She questioned, Professor Chanong, although I have no right to comment on your teaching method, you are obviously too lenient with your students. I remember Professor Lockhart repeatedly emphasized that we can only use the disarming curse. Chanong sighed. Professor Mag, you're making things too difficult for me. Wizards never restrain themselves in a duel, and the students of Demstrand have always received proper duel training. It is really too difficult for them to suddenly obey Professor Lockhart's words. Professor Mag's voice faltered because she didn't have high hopes for Professor Lockhart either. How unreliable would it be for the students to obey this professor's orders? She could only keep a straight face as she said, Don't tell me that the wizards' duels in Demstrand are as barbaric and impulsive as the Muggles? He was carrying a rod. Yes, that was a rod and not a magic staff. When he came up with the rod, I thought we were back in the Middle Ages again, when the Vatican's knights dragged their spiked hammers around to kill the wizards. No, Chanong explained. Professor Mag, he was casting the amnesia curse. This is the modification I made to the amnesia curse in Demstrand. I modified the amnesia curse, which is very difficult and has a high requirement on magic power and spellcasting technique, into a wandless spell. Later on, I realized that this kind of spell actually only requires a heavy blow to the head, and a large amount of wand movements and magic power can be omitted. You only need to touch the head with the wand and use the technique and magic of a mischievous spell to achieve the same effect as the amnesia curse that requires exquisite spell casting. Furthermore, you can use techniques to replace the requirement of magic power. This is an exquisite spell that makes use of magic power's inherent characteristics. The trick is to hit hard. The heavier the hit, the simpler the magic power required. Chapter 789. After the professors brought Lockhart to Madame Pomfrey, the students of Hogwarts and the exchange students from Durmstrang dispersed noisily, and this farce finally ended. Professor Mag felt exhausted from the bottom of her heart. She looked at the empty seats in the auditorium and sighed. Headmaster Dumbledore, you have made a wrong decision. Dumbledore smiled. Nothing is absolutely wrong, Maliva. There are only suitable and unsuitable. It's only the first day. Professor Mag sighed. It's only the first day, and a professor is already injured. Although I don't like Professor Lockhart, he's too frivolous, but this kind of treatment is too much for him. How is Professor Lockhart? His memory went back to 3 years ago. Dumbledore said calmly. Speaking of which, when Madame Pomfrey was treating him, she found something interesting. His memory for the past 3 years was very messy. When Madame Pomfrey was retrieving his memory, she only saw countless messy, indescribable bad memories. It was like the memory of a crazy monster that was stirred up by a forgetting spell. Madame Pomfrey said that just reading these memory fragments was going to drive her crazy. But when Madame Pomfrey was reading Lockhart's memory from 3 years ago, she accidentally discovered something. Maliva, although I don't want to believe it, I'm afraid Professor Lockhart will have to receive treatment in Azkaban. Azkaban has already been occupied by the Dark Warlocks. Professor Mag answered instinctively. Then his expression changed and he asked, What happened? Professor Lockhart is suspected of using a forgetting spell to steal other people's experiences. We have already found a victim. He was attacked by Professor Lockhart after he told Professor Lockhart about his journey with vampires. There might be many more victims like him. The adventures that Professor Lockhart wrote about in his best-selling book might have all been stolen from others. Oh my God! Professor Mag was in disbelief. Dumbledore whispered, "In order to protect the school's reputation, we will announce that Professor Lockhart has lost a portion of his memory due to a teaching accident and needs to receive treatment at St. Mungo's. The defense against black magic class will be temporarily handed over to Professor Chinong, who came for the exchange from Durmstrang." What? Professor Mag's eyes widened as she screamed, "You want a dark warlock to teach a defense against black magic class? It's better to let Snape take over. I know he's been eyeing that position for a long time." "This is what Professor Snape suggested," Dumbledore said in a low voice. Professor Mag was in disbelief. She grabbed the hem of Dumbledore's robe and asked in horror, "Is he crazy?" "Headmaster, Snape is mad. Are you mad too? How much trouble did that professor cause in class today?" "Sometimes if you don't give people a chance, you'll never be able to see them clearly." Dumbledore smiled. "If you don't let Professor Chin try, how will you know if he is suitable or not?" Chun-Ong returned to the dormitory with Durmstrang's students. Yakov had already recovered from his madness. After hearing what had happened from his classmates, his little face was pale with fright. When he saw Chun-Ong walk up to him, he trembled and stammered, "Pra! Professor, I didn't do it on purpose. I dreamed of the old gods last night. They controlled everything I did." "There are no old gods, Yakov," Chun-Ong said, shaking his head. "Only me. Although the existences in the poems that I made you memorize still exist, they are far away from this world. The chaos in this world, although still as chaotic, is not as indescribably terrifying. Those poems and magic books cannot communicate with those great old ones. They only describe the nature of magic chaos and made your mind more sensitive enough to touch the well of eternity. What you see is my reflection in the well of eternity, a distorted shadow because of the huge arcane energy and chaotic magic." Yakov was even more terrified. If Chun-Ong had been a terrifying black devil in their hearts before, he was now an omniscient and omnipotent evil god. Looking at the little wizards who were trembling like quails, the little girl's hair that was tangled together and tied into a dead knot, Yakov's tongue that was trembling and hitting against his teeth, and the 6 eyes of a tall wizard who was crying tears of blood behind his neck. Wicked Crum's lower jaw was full of octopus-like tentacles. The tentacles twitched as if they were convulsing, stretching towards Chun-Ang's back. Chun-Ong could not help but sigh. "It's all right, Yakov," he said calmly. "You did well. All of you must be wondering what the nature of magic and power you gained from touching the old gods in your dreams is. In the first few lessons, I mainly talked about how to control and protect one's own spirit. Some people learned this well and managed to maintain their human form. Some people didn't learn it well, or they rashly came into contact with the old gods, causing their bodies to mutate. All of you feel stronger and stronger day by day, and your magic grows at an exponential rate. I know that most of you are afraid of this, and think that the power of the old gods and monsters has infected you. But today, I'm going to tell you about the origin of the black magic you learn. According to research, most wizards' magic comes from their own bloodline. Wizards have magical bloodlines that are of the same origin as magical animals, which nourishes your magic, so your magic will gradually grow as you grow older. Secondly, some magic items that are closely related to wizards will also interact with each other because of their connection with wizards. When your magic power stimulates the growth of the magic items, it will also grow due to the reverse effect. All powerful magic items, such as the old wand, can also make a wizard's magic power stronger. But at the end of the day, wizards still use the power within their bodies. The magic power nourished by your bloodline. Your magic power originates from your physical strength, life force, and vitality. Wizards use magic spells to move the power of the entire world outside their bodies. This is the magic power and spell system. But I'm not satisfied with this. I hope to find the huge system that wizards use to pry open, and in turn, stimulate wizards, transform you, and obtain power that is far stronger than relying on bloodline growth. This is the origin of my black magic system. I found a new plane, a world beyond our world. There is an endless amount of power there. The whole process is a secret, but in the end, I absorbed this power into our world and opened up a well that connects our world to that world. That is the well of eternity, the source of darkness, the source of arcane magic, and the energy core of the universe. The controller of the well of eternity is an existence known as Morgoth. He discovered this world and radiated his power to this world. The power of the well of eternity that I discovered is a kind of pure energy known as arcane energy, while the power that Morgoth radiated to this world is a kind of chaotic magic with its own characteristics, which is full of darkness and chaos. Morgoth distorted my shadow, so that anyone who pursues arcane power will be infected with chaotic magic in their dreams. The well of eternity is a powerful source of radiation, with a powerful energy comparable to a star that can destroy the world. Every second, the energy absorbed from the well of eternity can destroy this planet more than 10 times. Therefore, when your magic is exposed to its radiation, it will grow thousands of times faster. If you have enough willpower to control this power, and enough wisdom to control this power, you will be omnipotent. If you have the determination, you can use Morgoth's power to explore the secrets of the well of eternity. Find a way to influence, control, and use this magnificent power. As your mentor, I have already guided you to the foot of this path. The rest of the path is up to you. Looking at the dumbfounded exchange students of Durmstrang, Chinong turned around and returned to his room, leaving behind a group of trembling wizards, shocked by his words. How long will it take for this setting to reach Dumbledore's ears? How long will Dumbledore consider before seeking death to sense the power of the well of eternity? Chin-Ong pondered. Should I give Harry some hints, lest he finds it difficult to compete with Dumbledore for the title of the next Dark Devil? Or give Malfoy a chance? Chapter 790. Chin-Ong stared at the sky. There, in the void where the wizards and muggles could not see, countless blue arcane energies converged into a huge energy vortex. From the surface of the earth, it occupied half of the sky. This energy vortex, called the Well of Eternity, was about half the diameter of the earth. It orbited the earth in an orbit further away from the moon. It radiated powerful arcane energies to the entire solar system. Of course, about 99% of the energy was compressed in the center of the vortex, and only 1% of the energy was radiated in the form of inertia. This inert arcane energy had some of the characteristics of dark energy. Unless it was activated by specific mental waves, it would not react with the visible matter and energy of the earth. The main body of Morgoth's will that Chin-Ong summoned from the Siluan world entered here. In the plane connected to the Well of Eternity, a low-latitude plane that had no concept of time, it took advantage of the huge time gap between that plane and the universe to absorb the endless fluctuating energy in the vacuum of the universe under the Planck time scale. Chin-Ong closed his eyes, and his will went to outer space. He looked at the Well of Eternity, which was 50 million kilometers away and about a quarter of the size of the Earth. The energy vortex was like a huge blue wheel spinning counterclockwise. The wheel was carved with countless three-dimensional runes, and it was a well made of pure, powerful arcane energy. As Chun-Ang's will was activated, the energy flowing in the mouth of the well, which was as vast as a star, gradually came to life. The entire Well of Eternity seemed to have awakened from its slumber. The blue runes lit up one by one, and in the blink of an eye, the wheel the size of a planet was lit up. Tens of millions of kilometers away, the Johnson Space Center of NASA in Houston United States, suddenly became restless a few minutes later. The director of NASA, Terry Franz, who was woken up by his subordinates, hurried to the conference room. He said angrily, "What happened? Why did you call me here in the middle of the night?" A scientist from NASA's Ames Research Center explained, "Just now, NASA's Ames Research Center, Dryden Flight Research Center, Glenn Research Center, Goddard Institute for Space Studies, Goddard Space Flight Center, Independent Certification and Appraisal Institute, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Kennedy Space Center, and 13 other research centers, including NASA's Ames Research Center, Dryden Flight Research Center, Glenn Research Center, Goddard Space Flight Center, Independent Certification and Appraisal Institute, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and Kennedy Space Center, all of which are affiliated with NASA. This may be the most shocking discovery since the perfection of quantum mechanics. Hearing the names of famous research institutions in the field of aerospace, astronomy, and outer space research, all of the conference participants couldn't help but straighten their backs. The director of NASA couldn't help but forget about his unhappiness just now and looked at the scientist with a serious expression. According to the data from the cesium atomic clocks, hydrogen masers, and rubidium atomic clocks in the major aerospace research institutes and satellites, our world has lost one. 30,892 seconds of time. Lost 1 second. The director's face was solemn. What happened? Did you find out the reason? The reason is unknown. The scientist was sweating profusely as he said with difficulty, "Today there are hundreds of atomic clocks distributed in more than 50 countries in the world. They constantly send their measured time to the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, BPM, in France. This is the International Atomic Time System. Just now, the various space agencies first reported the abnormality of the atomic clocks. After later comparison with the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, we finally confirmed that just 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 52 seconds ago, our Earth time has accelerated by 30,892 seconds." Looking at the bewildered federal officials, the scientist had to make a simple scientific explanation. As we all know, atomic clocks use the electromagnetic waves emitted when atoms absorb or release energy to keep time. This kind of electromagnetic wave is very stable, and the accuracy can reach the level of error of 1 second every 20 million years. But just now, the atomic clock's time was abnormally disordered. According to the comparison of the disordered data of the atomic clocks in various places, they seem to collectively have an error of about 1 second. Also, according to the order and time of the disordered satellite and atomic clocks in various places, we can confirm that the source of the accident is about 50 million kilometers away from Earth in outer space. What's the reason? The director slammed the table and asked, "If I have to report to the president, I have to at least tell him what the reason is. I can't wake the president up with a phone call and tell him that we know nothing. There are many possibilities." The scientist was sweating profusely as he explained, space-time and gravitational field have a very close relationship. It could be an abnormal fluctuation in the gravitational field of the solar system, such as the sudden interference of a massive celestial body. It could also be a sudden energy, tide erupting from the sun. It could even be that someone has traveled through time. What are the possibilities? The director asked solemnly. "I don't know. Maybe it's infinitely close to zero." The scientist wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Then give me the biggest possibility." The director roared. If there's the biggest possibility." The scientist looked up at the director with despair in his eyes and whispered, "Then it's probably that there are aliens passing by not far from Earth, and the curvature engine has caused fluctuations in the nearby gravitational field, causing space-time disorder." Aliens? The director's face was as ugly as death. "I'm going to report to the president, gather more information immediately, and summon the Star Wars program office. But the Star Wars program has been disbanded, then started again. At the same time, the British and American Ministry of Magic were already in chaos. The huge clock in the American Congress of Magic was already pointing to red, which was the exposed level, meaning that the world of magic was about to be exposed to the Muggles. There was also a clock in the British Ministry of Magic's Hall of Mysteries, and the hour hand on it was pointing to major threat. The Minister of Magic, Foggy, was already in a mess. He roared loudly, "Are you sure it's not Azkaban's problem? Is it the dark wizards up? They're doing something again? Minister, there's no movement from the dark wizards of Azkaban. Those former Death Eaters are still cautiously contacting their families. Get Dumbledore here, find the witch prophecy, and go to the Hall of Prophecy to see which crystal ball is glowing." Foggy said in a trembling voice. At this time someone shouted, "Found it, found it! It's the Hall of Time." Foggy hurriedly turned around. He hurried to the Hall of Time with his men, only to see that the hummingbird that was constantly reincarnating had frozen in the air. Among the countless clocks, some of the endless ticking sounds had become chaotic. Foggy looked at a stagnant clock. The hands on it had stopped at 3 hours, 52 minutes and 5 seconds ago, which was exactly 2 hours, 13 minutes and 52 seconds before the Houston Space Agency meeting. "Oh my God, it's time!" A wizard's mouth was wide open in horror. "Investigate," Foggy roared. "Investigate the time converter in the Ministry of Magic. Find out if anyone has violated the law of time and changed what happened in the past. Investigate the lost second." At this moment, someone shouted, "Dumbledore is here!" The crowd parted like a tide, revealing a tall figure with a long white beard. It was Dumbledore himself. Foggy went up to him as if he had seen his savior. His tone was flustered, as if a disaster was imminent. "Dumbledore, we're doomed. The time of this world is chaotic, and we're all in danger. Don't worry, speak slowly." Dumbledore's calmness calmed the restless hearts. He looked at Foggy with gentle but firm eyes and asked, "Tell me, what happened?" All of this was seen by Chun-Ong, who was controlling the Well of Eternity, but it was like a meteor streaking across the sky, leaving no trace. His will was supporting the Well of Eternity, which was half the diameter of Earth. The moment its energy was activated, the powerful energy distorted the gravitational field and created this chaos, but it had now stabilized. Those idiots in the world of magic might not be able to observe the Well of Eternity in the void even if they studied it for 1,000 years. Moreover, this energy construction technology is beyond their imagination. The technology one used to build the Well of Eternity is still too incredible for them, and it doesn't conform to the settings I just revealed. A black wizard can't create such a thing in any case. It's better to degrade a fake Well of Eternity. Chun-Ong controlled the arcane energy that gushed out of the Well of Eternity and shot it towards the moon. The rings in the void lit up layer by layer, and endless powerful arcane energy converged into a ray, shooting it from the center of the Well of Eternity to the moon. The powerful arcane energy began to reshape the moon according to Chun-Ang's will. In the future, the moon will be a focus of the Well of Eternity's radiation energy. Inert arcane energy will be activated by the moon and then radiated to Earth, making the wizards on Earth think that the moon is where the Well of Eternity is. This place shall be called the Well of Eternity. In the future, when the Well of Eternity is further developed, it can even transform the sun. By then, the Well of the Sun will also exist. Arcane energy is activated arcane energy, pure and powerful, full of pure destructive power and power. Then, should Morgatha's chaos magic be replaced with evil energy or chaos magic, I'm afraid those wizards won't be able to withstand the true chaos magic, and the world will be destroyed. As for the great old ones, the ancient evil gods, then it'll be the real ancient evil gods. Chun-Ong smiled and stuffed the clone of a Zathos that he had caught in the void into the moon, as well as the collective consciousness aberrations, entropy beasts, and psionic polluters that he had created during his experiments in the past. If I say it's an ancient evil god, then there must be an ancient evil god. I'm such an honest boy who never goes back on my words. There's indeed only Morgatha's consciousness in the well of eternity, but I didn't say that there wouldn't be an ancient evil god in the well of eternity. As for the fact that the moon is a well of eternity transformed by the well of eternity's radiation, and not the real well of eternity, that's a hidden worldview. Ha ha ha. Chapter 791. Filch was in his small office, a place that most students were unwilling to enter. The room was very dark, with only a single oil lamp hanging from the ceiling providing a meager amount of light. The room was windowless, and it constantly smelled of fried fish. In this respect, Filch had already mastered the essence of the dark cuisine of the British Empire. Large wooden cabinets stood against the gray, scratched walls, where the files of disobedient pupils had been kept. Against the cabinets was a fur-covered chaise long covered with cat hair, and in a conspicuous place behind the desk hung a pair of heavy shackles. Everyone in the school knew that Filch had often begged Dumbledore to let him hang his pupils from the ceiling. Of course, unless Dumbledore was crazy, he would never agree. Filch also liked to threaten to lock students up in the dungeons in the basement of Hogwarts. He kept a 9-headed whip. This whipping instrument was a favorite of the Muggle Catholic monks for self-abuse. It was also used in some missionary schools to discipline students, flogging and corporal punishment. Malfoy glanced around in disgust. "Stinks of cat," he said gruffly. "Clean it up." He did not use his wand. He just pressed his fingers slightly, and a strong suction force sucked the air out of the room and replaced it with fresh air. Gall and Crabbe were still behind him, but after a period of training from Malfoy, they were much more obedient and had a little more awareness of being lackeys. "Let us wait here for Filch to come." Malfoy sneered. He pulled out a letter from his pocket and said to the 2 lackeys, "Go, well done. If you hadn't discovered this, I wouldn't have known about Filch's secret." He lowered his head and read the words on the envelope. Rapid Conjuring Correspondence Course for Beginner Magicians. Malfoy raised the letter in his hand and announced loudly to his lackeys, "Our gatekeeper, Argus Filch, is actually a lowly, disgusting squib. A squib even lower than the mud. No wonder I've never seen him use magic." Malfoy laughed heartily. Gall and Crabbe also laughed. Crabbe replied to Malfoy fawningly, "A squib. In our family, if we gave birth to a squib, it would be a disgrace to the entire family. My father would definitely get rid of him." Even the wizards who followed Dumbledore would banish the squib from their family. But Dumbledore actually dared to keep a squib in the school. "If I tell my father about this, he will definitely kick both Filch and Dumbledore out of the school. He is a trustee of Hogwarts. He has the power to do so." Malfoy replied reflexively, but he quickly snapped out of his childlike, cruel, and boastful state of mind. He subconsciously tightened his grip on the black, leather-bound magic tome in his arms and whispered to his 2 followers, "When Filch returns, you 2 guard the door." Gall and Crabbe thought of the knowledge he had learned from the book, how to control subordinates, how to hold power, how to control great, exquisite magical power. He reflected on his immaturity just now and became solemn. Gall and Crabbe saw that Malfoy had become silent and solemn, and they both shrunk their heads and hid behind Malfoy. For some reason, they were most afraid of Malfoy in this state. Malfoy did not have to wait long before the door opened, and Filch walked in with a triumphant smile on his face. "Harry Potter is in trouble this time," Filch said excitedly to Madame Norris. "I've finally caught his tail." Although mischievous did not say it, he is now so afraid of Harry Potter, which can only mean that the one who caused trouble that night was indeed him. His eyes turned to the inside of the room and saw Malfoy and the other 2. Filch sprang to his feet like an old cat. "Malfoy," he cried, "now is not the time for you to walk around. Looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson." Filch stopped talking, and his pale face turned brick red. His mouth, which had been dutifully and caustically just a moment ago, was wide open like a dead fish. The vitality that had been mixed with harshness and jealousy in Filch's body seemed to have been sucked out of him in an instant, and he became a little dazed. He hobbled over to Malfoy and the other two, and tried to snatch the letter away. But Malfoy put it away with lightning speed. He gave Gaul and Crabbe a look, and Crabbe hurriedly pulled the reluctant Gaul to the door to hold the letter. Spell of disruption. Malfoy closed the door to Filch's office, and also used the spell on them. He did not trust Gaul and Crabbe. After using the spell, even if they leaned on the door to eavesdrop, they would not hear anything. Filch. Malfoy remembered some of the things he had learned from the book, and decided to try them on Filch today. He sat in Filch's chair and crossed his hands on his knees like a big boss. He whispered to Filch. Dumbledore kept the secret well. Who would have thought that the gatekeeper of Hogwarts, a part of its glory, would actually have a squib in an inconspicuous corner of this glorious, great school? No, no, Filch stammered. This isn't mine. It's for a friend. It might look like, but I can see through people like you at a glance. This is the skill of our Malfoy family. Every Malfoy family member can see through those lowly mudbloods full of lies and squibs, Malfoy sneered. Look at your eyes. Don't you see the ugly expression of jealousy and greed when you look at those noble purebloods, even if they are lowly mudbloods? Argus Filch, I don't know which pure-blooded family you are the disgrace of, but you must have been kicked out of the house by your family. Because of your family's leniency or negligence, you have been allowed to live in such a disgrace. The reason you hate those wizards who have made mistakes is because when you look at them, your heart is filled with jealousy and resentment, like a poisonous snake gnawing at you. Those youthful auras, happy laughter, and magic all reflect your ugly heart, like a mirror. That's why you are so jealous and resentful. You enjoy the feeling of torturing them. You are born to be a traitor. We all know why you prepared the shackles and whips in your house, and we all know how you look forward to sending the children of Magi to the dungeon. I swear, if I tell my father about this, he, who is very concerned about the growth of young Magi, will gather the school board and let those noble, pure-blooded Magi chase you out of this school. I never thought of it like that, Filch said fearfully. Master Malfoy, I never dared to think of it like that. If I were such a person, Dumbledore would definitely chase me out. It doesn't matter what Dumbledore thinks. Malfoy scolded. What matters is what my father and I think. You should know the legend. If the Dark Lord knew that you, a squib, dared to be in the place where he once studied, the Death Eaters would kill you, just like Dumbledore's demonstration. They won't do anything to the students, because their children are inside. They won't do anything to the mudbloods, because it will drive their parents crazy. But what about you? Filch, who cares about a squib? Dumbledore will protect me, Filch said incoherently. He can't take care of himself. Besides, Filch, squib is an original sin, a dirty and lowly thing. It is a disgrace to wizards, a disgrace to the family. I know, Filch. No one wants to be a squib. Look at Neville, he almost became a squib. This is all thanks to his uncle, who forced out Neville's little potential. From now on, Neville's future will be completely different. No wizard will be willing to marry a squib. But Neville, a wizard, can study in Hogwarts, Malfoy said mockingly. So you are still praying for these deceptive lies. He tore Filch's letter apart, and Filch was so excited that he wanted to snatch it back. Strangle hand. Malfoy roared angrily, and Filch immediately felt an invisible hand choking his throat. The hand was shockingly strong, like a giant monster, and Filch was lifted into the air. He could only helplessly struggle against the invisible hand. His pale face flushed red, and his legs kicked weakly in the air. Do you understand the difference between us? I am a wizard, a powerful, noble, pure-blooded wizard, while you are just a squib that is not even comparable to mud. You should be glad that you are living in this chaotic era. If you were still living in the glorious era of purebloods, you would have drowned at the age of 11. Filch looked at the cold Malfoy in despair, but he felt the hand on his throat loosen, and he fell to the ground. But you are lucky. I am not an ordinary wizard. Even among the purebloods, I am more glorious. I have the power that the wizards of the past could not even dream of. My power can topple everything. As a squib, you have a new choice. Live on as a wizard, and not die like a piece of trash in the coming reckoning. Malfoy laughed. I can let you regain your magic. Although magic is rooted in noble bloodlines, the mud species proved that one does not need noble bloodlines to become a pure-blooded to grasp some of the secrets of magic. This is the purebloods bestowing their power to their servants, allowing muggles to have magic. But unlike the purebloods, the magic of the mud species originates from magical creatures, from domestic elves, and from the bloodlines of magical animals. I know this secret, and I have mastered the magic to bestow magic to muggles again, the bloodline modification magic. It can inject those stinky, lowly blood into your veins, so that you and your descendants will have lowly magic. But you must remember that the magic of the purebloods is noble, while the magic of the mud species originates from beasts and is lowly by nature. People nowadays are confused about this. In the future, I will make them remember it again. Chapter 792. After a long and thrilling night, when Harry Potter woke up the next morning, he saw the exchange students from Durmstrang in the hall. They were sitting beside Gryffindor's table. When the three of them were having their meal, they could even hear their conversation from the other side. Hey, did you know? There's an interesting forest behind this school, a big wizard said in a low voice. What do you mean by this school? It's Hogwarts. Hermione said to the three of them in a low voice. They're so rude. Harry turned around and saw the little guy, Yakov, on the duel stage that day. He said to the big guy with a solemn expression, That's the Forbidden Forest, the forbidden area of this school. It's said to have a long history, and there are many kinds of magical creatures living there. There are many strange things there. Werewolves, I heard. Werewolves. The exchange students from Durmstrang exclaimed in a low voice. This reminded Harry of the first night he came into contact with the Forbidden Forest. At that time, Neville had said the same thing, but Neville had said it in a sobbing and terrified tone. His voice sounded as if it was choked in his throat. And these exchange students from Durmstrang were excitedly talking about the legend of the werewolves in the Forbidden Forest with anticipation. Harry Potter heard a very familiar tone, one that Gryffindor was most familiar with, a sign of trouble. Cool, Yakov said loudly. Are they trying to protect the werewolves? We Russians don't know how to protect the werewolves. I heard from my dad that werewolves were very common in Siberia and Ukraine during his time, but they gradually disappeared. They were all killed by muggles, his big companion added. Muggles are really scary. Back then, those muggles would carry guns and enter the forest during the winter to hunt bears and werewolves. They would find werewolves that had nowhere to feed during the winter, usually in a pack led by an alpha wolf. They would then kill them all and pluck the werewolf skin to make a coat, the big guy added. It's said that there are many other magical creatures protected in the Forbidden Forest, such as centaurs and unicorns, eight-eyed spiders and hippogriffs. That's great, raising these little animals at the back of the school, not far from the school. Wouldn't it be great if our Durmstrang could do the same? Yakov praised sincerely. Hermione finally couldn't help but interrupt. You know about the Forbidden Forest, but you don't know how dangerous it is. Those dangerous magical animals. Danger? Yakov nodded. It is indeed very dangerous. We must not be caught by the professor and the Ministry of Magic. You know, the magical animals here are in great danger. Many of them are about to go extinct. Those tall and strong centaurs, werewolves that go berserk during the night of the full moon, and trolls, the largest troll among the trolls. My God, my dream is to kill a mountain troll, a burly Slavic exclaimed in joy. I've had enough of these stinky and slimy deep ones. A troll. I could put its head on the wall next to the fireplace in my house. Hunting troll is illegal. Yakov warned him. That's why I just want to play with it. Hermione's warning did not have any effect. It seemed like the exchange students from Durmstrand only got more excited. Even after breakfast, they were still chattering about the magical animals, discussing their fangs, claws, venom, and lethality. Harry felt like there were 5 or 6 hags gathered together, all with glowing eyes. They will definitely go on a night swim to the Forbidden Forest tonight, Hermione concluded. Harry and Ron agreed with her judgment, but Hermione continued, "That's why we have to tell Professor Mag." "How can we do that?" Ron almost jumped up. "I don't want to be a traitor. Think about it. If someone tells the professor when we go on a night swim, I will cut off all ties with him." "But you don't have any ties with them," Hermione pointed out calmly. "Then it's not our place to tell," Ron said angrily. "There are too many people like you who will only tell and report to the professor. Gryffindor is never afraid. If we don't tell the professor, then they might die." Hermione said solemnly. "I think," Ron said eagerly, "we should follow behind them and protect their safety. We went to the Forbidden Forest the last time. We can stop them in time this time too." Hermione understood Harry's gaze. She nervously said, "Harry, you won't agree with what he's doing, right?" When night fell, Gryffindor's lounge gradually quietened down. The door to Harry's dormitory opened silently. At the door of the lounge, the fat lady was sleeping. She was woken up by the noise and exclaimed, "Who is it? Who's there?" But there was no one behind the open door. The faint rustling sound of feet rubbing against the ground extended to the corridor. There, Hermione suddenly came out from the side and said to the empty air, "I knew you guys wouldn't give up." A head suddenly popped out from the air. Ron said in a low voice, "Hermione, how did you find us?" Hermione sneered, "You stepped on the salt on the ground." Only then did Ron notice that there was a line of salt sprinkled on the ground. Hermione led the way as she explained, "In Muggle culture, salt has an indissoluble bond with wizards. They believe that salt is sacred and can exorcise evil and stop demons. This should be the reason. It can be used to make invisible things visible. Muggles use it to protect themselves." When Harry and the rest arrived at Hagrid's wooden house in front of the Forbidden Forest, they did not have any trouble finding the students of Durmstrang. There were 4 of them, and they quickly escaped from Hogwarts Castle. Hermione was the first to greet them. "Hey, look what I found! A group of like-minded people." Yakov was overjoyed. The big guy opened his arms. "Welcome to our Forbidden Forest exploration team." "I'm not here to join you," Hermione said angrily. "Do you know how dangerous it is here? The werewolves will bite your throats, and the 8-eyed spiders will inject venom into your body." "8-eyed spiders?" Ron screamed. Harry hurriedly covered his mouth and whispered, "Don't wake Hagrid." The Durmstrang students also whispered, "It's not safe here. Let's go in and talk." Chapter 793. They walked into the Forbidden Forest, where there was a winding path. Harry had been here before, under Hagrid's lead, but now there were only 7 of them. Harry was a little uneasy, and Ron was already regretting his impulsiveness, ever since he heard that there were spiders in the Forbidden Forest. Hermione was still angry, and only Yakov and the other 3 were holding their thick wands excitedly. A faint cold wind blew up their hair. Suddenly, Harry found something with a silver luster. He rushed over and found something flashing on the ground at the edge of the path. Harry picked up the liquid and smelled blood. "This is unicorn blood." He turned to Hermione and said. She also came over and looked at the traces. "It's exactly the same as what we saw in the Forbidden Forest last time. A unicorn is hurt." Harry felt a numbness in his fingertips. He quickly shook his arm. Hermione couldn't help but scold him. "Why did you touch it with your hand?" The blood of a unicorn is cursed. Hermione said, "Do you remember the last time someone hurt a unicorn?" Harry did not have time to respond. He panicked. Last time, Voldemort possessed Professor Quirrell and absorbed the unicorn's blood to maintain his life. You mean Voldemort is back? Not necessarily, but it's possible. Harry said seriously. Hermione, we have to go and see. We have to find the injured unicorn, or the thing that hurt him. Ron said nervously. Why don't you go back and tell Dumbledore? Dumbledore has gone to the Ministry of Magic. Hermione added, and it's too late to go back now. That guy will escape. Looking at the coagulation of the blood, he can't have gone far. Yakov also squatted beside the unicorn's blood curiously. He carefully collected some and mumbled, Cursed unicorn's blood? It's a good material for black magic. It's especially useful for making some poisons and curses. I seem to have heard you mention Voldemort. Could this blood be caused by him? Yes, if you're afraid, then go back quickly. Hermione replied impatiently. Afraid? No, no, no. I want to say it's wonderful. Yakov almost cheered, shouting to his Slavic companions. Did you hear that? Guys, Voldemort is here too. Catch him. Catch a Voldemort? Is there anything more exciting than this? They cheered and jumped for joy. Hermione's mouth moved, but no words came out of her mouth. The forest was still dark and silent. Walking up the path, they finally followed the intermittent trail of blood. Harry saw the Durmstrang Exchange students raise their thick, large wands. The silver gleam at the tip was so dazzling that it lit up a large part of the darkness in the forest. At last he had to say to them, Dim the light. You'll alert them. With such a bright light, anyone will be able to discover us. Yakov turned around and replied, They won't find out. See my wand? Harry looked over and saw that the top of the staff, where the white crystal gem was fixed, was open like a withered claw, and the silver light was shining there. Harry suddenly remembered the hand he had seen in Borgin's shop. That's the thief's hidden light. Our professor modified the magic based on the thief's hand. The flashing light is only visible to us. In the eyes of others, it's still dark. Your professor is very powerful, Harry said insincerely. Of course, Yakov replied. My classmates and I all think that he might be the most powerful dark wizard in the world. He often creates some dangerous and magical magic. Recently, he has been studying the magic system of ancient Egypt. The reason why he came to England as our exchange professor is to find the 2 legendary magic books of ancient Egypt. The Golden Book of the Sun. Harry blurted out. You also know about these 2 books? Yakov was surprised. Yes. Rumor has it that these 2 books were originally hidden in the city of the dead, Hamneth Tower, but were stolen by British explorers. Recently, someone found traces of these 2 books in England. That's why the professor came to England. These 2 books? What's so magical about them? Harry stammered. The Golden Book of the Sun hides the secret of rebirth, and the Black Book of the Dead hides the secret of resurrecting the dead. The Golden Book of the Sun is the hymn of the gods, which hides the true names of the ancient Egyptian gods, their power, and the secrets of eternal life and rebirth. The Black Book of the Dead is the book of the dead of Hades, which hides the secret of the underworld. They are the most powerful books of white magic and black magic in ancient Egypt. Yakov explained. That's what our professor said, but he often tells us some strange things that are not recorded in the books. These may not be true. Have you ever seen a wounded unicorn? Yakov asked curiously. They are said to be very powerful and magical creatures. Few things can hurt them. Yes. Harry recalled the magical animal he saw last semester and said in a low voice, There are always some evils beyond our imagination. The purest are often the first to suffer. Harry stared at the blood on the ground and said sadly, It's lost too much blood. It can't go far. He did not say what he meant, but the others already understood. Hermione said, "Hurry up. I hope we're not late." They sped up a little, and at the same time they became more alert. Their ears were alert to catch even the faintest sound on the dark path. Suddenly, an unusual sound came from the bushes behind the stream. Yakov clenched his wand and took the lead to confront the sound. His speed was as fast as a black bolt of lightning. Soon, there was a roar in front of them. Yakov shouted, "It's a werewolf!" Harry rushed over and prepared a spell with his wand. He forgot that he would be killed if he went up. Werewolves were very resistant to magic, and even adult wizards could not hurt them. However, when he reached the back of the big oak tree, all he saw was a huge monster with a wolf's head, wailing in pain. Yakov shouted excitedly, "Don't run, little wolf!" As he swung his iron birch wand at the creature's face, Harry watched as the wand struck the werewolf's nose with a sharp crack. He shuddered at the sound of the wand whistling through the air. The werewolf was in pain. The werewolf's broken teeth were knocked out. It howled like a puppy and tried to run away. Yakov swung his wand, which looked like a flexible black snake in his hand, hit the werewolf into the air. Hermione and the other Slavic students came up from behind. The big guy was about to help with his wand, but the werewolf was terrified. It ran into the depths of the forbidden forest in a panic. Yakov held his wand upside down, laughing strangely and following it. A group of people followed, closely behind. The wind whistled past Harry's ears. He felt his heart beating excitedly. It was so exciting. They were chasing a werewolf. Yakov didn't chase the werewolf for long before he saw a big pool of silver blood and a strong smell of blood. It must be the blood that attracted the werewolf. There was a shiny white thing lying on the ground, not far away. It was a unicorn. A dark shadow stood beside it. Hearing people coming, it quickly ran back. Yakov had never seen such a beautiful animal, but it was dead. With a flick of his hand, his wand lashed out like a dragon, striking the werewolf's calf joint with a cracking sound. At this time, his classmate also caught up. The big guy elbowed the werewolf, and the werewolf's expression was so sad that it looked like it was about to die. At this time, Harry and the other two also caught up. They saw an unspeakable shadow stand up from the forest behind the unicorn. Its scales were like the night, and its eyes were long and narrow like those of cold-blooded animals. It had strong, rock-like muscles, hidden under black, non-reflective scales. Its head was like an extinct, prehistoric animal, a magical creature that still existed in the magic world, a dragon. It was a black dragon, but it was completely different from the black dragons of the Hihaiti Islands. Its eyes were like the reflection of silver in the moonlight, and its back was smooth, without the typical razor-like ridge of the black dragons of the Hihaiti Islands. Its face was very strange, like skin and bones, and its eye sockets were deep like a skull. Its eyes were very lively, as if they could speak. When it saw Harry, it showed a sarcastic and disdainful look. When it stood up, it was about as tall as a tree. The wound on the unicorn's neck seemed to have been caused by its sharp claws. For some reason, Harry felt that this dragon had a feeling that he was very familiar with. The black dragon stepped on the unicorn's body with one claw, looked down at them, and showed a human-like expression of sarcasm. It looked back at the fleeing figure and showed its blade-like teeth to Harry and the others. Hermione shouted, "Run!" and pulled Harry to run back. Yakov just clenched the wand in his hand, showing an excited expression. The black dragon gently flapped its wings and flew up, not at all as clumsy as a large dragon. It swept over the top of Yakov's head, attracting Yakov to make a strange cry and run after it. The black dragon squeezed out and flew above Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Its shadow passed through them, through the branches above, and left a large, deep shadow on the fallen leaves. "Scabby!" Ron suddenly exclaimed. The mouse came out of his pocket and ran back without looking back. Ron stopped, and Hermione quickly pulled him and shouted, "Run for your life first! We'll go back and find it later." At this time, Yakov also followed excitedly, running in the direction of the black dragon above his head. The big man who fell behind stood next to the unicorn's body. He pressed his hand on the magical animal's body. The soft, warm body had gradually become cold. He was surprised to find that the blood in the unicorn's body had been reduced by more than half, so the body had lost its elasticity. The big man wanted to bury it, but he had to follow up now, lest he be separated from his companions. But just after he ran some distance, he felt that a mouse seemed to run past him. Through the gap in the woods, he saw the mouse turn into a short, fat, weird man with the characteristics of a mouse. He hurried to the unicorn's side, lowered his head, leaned over the unicorn's wound, and began to suck its blood. A putrid, disgusting smell suddenly rushed into his nose. The three of them ran wildly in many directions. The black dragon above their heads seemed to be teasing them, chasing them left and right. Seeing Ron's sorrowful expression, Hermione comforted him. "Don't worry, we will get it back." Ron cried and said, "I'm not sad for Scabby, but for myself. Mom, I'm dying." Chapter 794. Harry crawled under the thick root, hoping that when the black dragon hovered over the Forbidden Forest, it would not be able to see the three of them through the dense canopy, and Yakov was not far away. Harry hoped that the professors would discover the dragon over the Forbidden Forest earlier, and also hoped that Yakov could lead the dragon over. Although this was somewhat selfish, it was hard to say which one was more terrible, Yakov or the dragon. The three of them held their breath, because they heard the figure of a broken branch above their heads. A strong, vigorous giant body broke the branch and landed nearby. When it moved, the rustling sound of the fallen leaves was endless. Such a huge creature would inevitably make noise when it moved. The tremors caused by its heavy body on the ground seemed to be getting closer and closer. The three of them clung to the wet soil, trying to hide their bodies in the depression. Ron's heart was beating wildly. Hearing the sound that was getting closer and closer, they almost suffocated. "Little dragon!" Yakov screamed in the distance. "It's there. Don't run. Little dragon!" The sound of the black dragon approaching the three of them suddenly stopped and then quickly moved away. The sound of branches breaking and the sound of the dragon's wings flapping in the air came from above, and the sound gradually went away in the direction of Yakov. "Thank God!" Ron could not help but say. "The dragon has finally been led away." Harry thought so too. He patted the soil on his body and said to Hermione, "There's a black dragon in the Forbidden Forest. We must tell the professor about it. I'll go find Hagrid. At least we have to save those students of Durmstrang." Ron stepped out of the protection of the root and hesitated. It's hard to say whether they need our help or not. The wizards who can beat the werewolves like that, if they join hands, they may not be afraid of a dragon. At least for wizards, werewolves are not easy to deal with than dragons. Are we going to protect that dragon or the lunatics of Durmstrang? That's not an ordinary dragon. Hermione retorted, "Haven't you felt it?" As soon as we saw that dragon, we completely lost the courage to resist. That's definitely not an ordinary dragon. It may be an ancient dragon. Ancient dragon? Ron scratched his head in confusion. Hermione explained, "Yes, in some magic books it is mentioned that, just like the ancient wizards, there are some differences between ancient dragons and modern dragons. Ancient dragons are more intelligent, like centaurs and murlocs, with human-like intelligence and unique magic, unlike modern dragons, which are just some bigger beasts. Ancient dragons used to be like fairies, having their own magic system. According to the books, one of the characteristics that distinguishes ancient dragons from modern dragons is the term dragon might. It is said that ancient dragons would exert a unique spiritual pressure on their prey." "Got it. Miss Know-It-All." Ron muttered. He turned back and climbed out of the roots. Harry followed, closely behind. He looked down for a place to climb and accidentally bumped into Ron in front of him. Harry was about to ask Ron why he was still in front of him. As soon as he looked up, he saw a pair of silver-white eyes staring at them with some sarcasm. It was a pair of platinum pupils. Harry believed what Hermione had said before. The pupils showed no less vivid spirituality than a human. So much so that the three of them could see that the black dragon was looking at them with a sneer, its eyes full of contempt and sarcasm. There was an indescribable sense of oppression on the black dragon, as cold and bloodthirsty as a blade, making people's hands and feet numb and weak. The black dragon did not look like a bloodthirsty beast, but with a calm, even a sense of pride. Harry was very familiar with this. He could even read the black dragon's thoughts from its eyes. "You stupid, lowly mortals." Harry quietly tightened his grip on his wand, but before he could make a move, the black dragon opened its mouth and spat out a force field that knocked the wand out of his hand. Harry was very familiar with this feeling. "Use your weapon," he said in horror. A dragon that could use magic. The dragon stepped out with its front claws. Ron took out his wand to stop it, but the old wand was broken by a strange magic around the black dragon's body before he could lift it. The black dragon grabbed Harry and flew high into the sky, leaving Hermione screaming in despair on the ground. Ron was slapped hard by the black dragon's wings and hit a tree. It seemed that at least 2 of his ribs were broken. The black dragon tightened his grip on Harry, making it difficult for him to breathe. His lungs were burning with pain. He saw the black dragon proudly and wantonly roar. When he looked down at Harry in his hand, he showed that look again: disdain, understanding, and even a little relief, as if something that had been entangled for a long time had suddenly been loosened. The black dragon flew towards the dead unicorn. Harry was in the air, and the cold wind poured into his mouth. His eyes blurred uncontrollably. He tried to keep his head down, refusing to let his glasses slide. Then he felt his body tremble slightly, and the black dragon landed near the unicorn's body. There was a short, fat, wretched-looking wizard biting the unicorn's throat, trying to squeeze out the last drop of blood. The black dragon threw Harry to the ground and suddenly said in a human voice, "Harry Potter, the prophesied savior, is actually nothing more than this." The strange man saw the black dragon and hurriedly tried to escape, but he soon fell not far away with a cry and shouted, "Master, I was wrong, master. I beg you." "No." "Ah." He screamed, and his face suddenly turned yellow, as if he had aged 10 years. But the black dragon did not even spare him a glance. It stared at Harry Potter and said in a low voice, "I was once enchanted by the halo around you, the halo of a savior. It was so dazzling that I forgot the real you underneath the halo, the weak, vulnerable mortal body. You are one of the 2 shadows in my heart. When I opened my mouth to invite you to be my friend, you rejected me. For the friendship of a Weasley, you rejected me." The black dragon roared angrily. "No one has ever rejected me before. You actually dared to be the first." Harry could not believe it, and he said in shock, "You are Malfoy?" "I am Dracula, dragon." The black dragon laughed coldly. "Just because you are the savior. I have been brooding over this, but just now I finally understood that I was influenced by those mud creatures. I should let the people of the world be my friends, and let them feel proud to be able to kiss my toes. I should not be entangled in the friendship of a fragile, bubbly savior. I shall be the king of wizards." The black dragon slowly turned around and looked at the short and fat wizard who was twitching behind it. Its body gradually shrank, and its black scales twisted into a huge shadow. Suddenly, a youth with long platinum hair and dressed in a black robe walked out of the shadow. It was Malfoy. He looked at Peter Pettigrew, who was lying in the dust, and said in a low voice, "There is still the second shadow that needs to be dealt with. I used to fear and revere him. My beloved father had no dignity under his feet. They worshipped him as their king and revered him as a god. I thought I respected him, but later on, I realized that I did not have the slightest bit of respect for him. From the beginning to the end, I only feared his cruelty, coldness, and power. I imitated him, and my family feared him, until I saw through his weakness, stupidity, madness, and cowardice. He is not fit to be king. Peter Pettigrew's body suddenly turned over, and a pale face that looked like a corpse appeared behind his head. The face suddenly spoke. "Who gave you such courage? Malfoy? Was it your cowardly father who trembled under my feet?" "Shut up." Malfoy raised his hand and shot out a ray of blue light. The spell landed on Pettigrew's body, causing him to tremble violently. Voldemort's soul, which was attached to the back of his head, creaked as if it was soaked in acid. His face was corroded into a bloody mess, and Voldemort's soul wailed in pain. "Dark scripture of the undead," Voldemort shrieked. "You stole its power, and now you can use my weakness to harm me. But when I truly return, I will make sure you die a horrible death. Death is my domain. Have you asked me if you want to return?" Malfoy said sternly. He waved his wand, and Voldemort's soul suddenly burst into flames. The flames of the underworld roasted his soul. Harry immediately understood when he heard the words "dark scripture of the undead." He had always had his suspicions, but at this moment he finally confirmed that the other magic book was indeed in Malfoy's hands. "Today, I will completely resolve everything from the past," Malfoy said gloomily. "Savior, Voldemort, everything will become a thing of the past." Hearing this, Harry took a step back, but Malfoy laughed. He said, "I won't kill you, Harry. You don't understand. You have never been my enemy. My glory and humiliation have nothing to do with you. The one who truly hurt me was the fate that was imposed on you. Savior, how can a mere enemy of Voldemort be worthy of being called a savior? I will bury Voldemort and imprison him in the underworld forever, where he will suffer hellish torture. I will bury your fate, Harry Potter. You will only be a boy who escaped death, and the prophecy of the Messiah will become a joke. This is my true goal." The book that Harry had seen in the wardrobe appeared in Malfoy's hands. It had a black metal cover, and the dark scripture of the undead was already open. Voldemort howled and turned into black smoke, about to escape into the sky. Chapter 795. Harry watched as Voldemort's soul struggled and wailed on the black scripture of the undead. "Voldemort," howled Malfoy, "do you think that you can replace me with this? No, you will never be able to replace me. You may take advantage of my momentary failure to think that you have surpassed me, but you are just a clumsy imitator from the beginning to the end. You are just imitating me, becoming my shadow." "Imitating you?" Malfoy laughed. No, my predecessor, the Dark Devil. What is there to imitate in your foolish attempt to use terror and tyranny to maintain your rule? In the eyes of a true pure-blooded noble, you are nothing more than a mud seed. Even if my father and the others made you famous, a mixed blood is still a mixed blood. You will never be able to truly lead a great pure-blooded family. Only I, Dracula Malfoy, who possesses the purest and greatest bloodline of the 28 pure-blooded families, have the right to rule all of this as the king of the Magi. Malfoy laughed coldly. When you used fear to make people submit, and when you used death and tyranny to rule everything, you were destined to perish. You failed to become a Superman, and instead became a slave to yourself, a madman with great power. But I am different from you. I will use the will of power to rule everything, and I will use wisdom to control my power. I will establish a new order in the world of magic. I will establish a country and create a new order." Malfoy laughed proudly. He said in a low voice, "I'll let you have a look. The new order that I have created. Thank you, Sister Peltier, for bringing me a reasonable order that is truly just and the truth that rules. In the world of magic in India, the noble bloodline of the Magi effectively and powerfully rules over the world of magic there. They divide the Magi into 4 classes based on their bloodline and talents. Every magus can tell the class they belong to from their surname. They call it caste. Great creation, Malfoy praised. Among the wise Indian magi, there are no mudbloods who don't know what's good for them. The purest bloodline among the magi is the noble magi who are born with perfect and powerful magic power. They are called Brahmins, and the next pure-blooded magi are the Kshatriyas. The Brahmins study the essence of magic, and the Kshatriyas rule the Indian magi. Most of the ordinary magi, the pure-blooded ones who marry muggles, are the Vaishyas, and the mudbloods, the magi whose parents are muggles, are the Sudras. What a perfect order! Malfoy praised. Over there, the mudbloods and mixed bloods are very obedient. They know where they stand, so the Indian magic world has always maintained peace and prosperity. Harry! Malfoy turned to Malfoy and Malfoy. Kshatriyas, Malfoy said. Kshatriyas are the noble Kshatriyas, but your mother is only Kshatriyas. Do you? Kshatriyas, Malfoy said. Malfoy, Mally, family Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas, I got Harry, Harry replied. Family is a sacred place. Malfoy actually calmed down and said nonchalantly, marriage between the nobles and the commoners makes them untouchables. But I don't want to completely transplant the order of the Indian magic world. My great England has its own national conditions. How can I learn everything from others? But I don't want to completely transplant the order of the Indian magic world. England has its own national conditions. How can we learn from others? England's magic world has been polluted by mud-blooded people for too long. Under the leadership of Dumbledore and his fools, many glorious pure-blooded families have been mixed with Muggle blood. If we were to screen them, who knows how many sacred, pure-blooded families would be left? For example, you, Harry Potter. The Potters were my Malfoy family's in-laws. We must be more lenient toward them. On a whim, Malfoy explained it to Voldemort and Harry. So we can't just take all of India. We need to change it. It was only later that I discovered the way to create a sacred order. Malfoy said with a fanatical expression, Filch, come out. Let Lord Voldemort see you. As Malfoy called out, Harry turned around in surprise. Not far away, a trembling figure staggered over the bushes and into the clearing. He was balding and had a head full of messy hair. His ugly face no longer had the fierceness and malevolence that Harry had seen before. Instead, he appeared cowardly and fearful. It was the school's caretaker, Filch. What was surprising was that Filch was holding a wand in his hand. His eyes were sunken and bloodshot. Filch looked at the dark scripture of the dead in Malfoy's hand in fear and said in a trembling voice, Young Master Malfoy, are you asking me to deal with Potter? Malfoy laughed coldly. Filch, you untouchable. Even though you have magic and have become a wizard, you must remember that a wizard like you, who has stolen the bloodline of a magical creature, is only one of the lowliest wizards. However, you must remember that you are a sorcerer who has stolen the bloodline of a magical creature. You are only one of the lowest of the sorcerers. The Potter family is one of the 28 greatest families. You must remember your identity. Also, who allowed you to call yourself I? You lowly servant. Filch's expression contorted. He lowered his head and said, Master is right. Malfoy turned his head in satisfaction and said to Harry, To create an eternal sacred order, we can only rely on the greatest and most miraculous power of us magi, magic. Back then, even those lowly fairies dared to be mentioned in the same breath as us magi. It was our ancestors who used their power and blood to make them submit, turning those fairies who killed magi and rebelled into the fairies that serve the pure-blooded fairies loyally today. This is the glorious history and great deeds of our pure-blood ancestors. But today, the descendants of those same people have forgotten the glory of their ancestors and have fallen to the mud race. In this time of danger, it is time for me, Malfoy, to step forward bravely and sacrifice my life to create the glory of the pure blood and make the pure blood great again. That Filch was just a lowly squib, But with my power and the power of magic bestowed upon him by the black scripture of the undead, I killed the unicorn and used the unicorn's blood to replace his bloodline, allowing him to regain his magic. Of course, there is still a small problem. Because the unicorn's blood was cursed, Filch was unable to inherit the unicorn's miraculous healing powers. Instead, he obtained a bloodline that was closer to black magic. He could only learn black magic, and his magic required hatred, curses, brutality, and malice to be used. This gave him great destructive power, but in terms of basic curses, he was not as good as a regular magus. I can also plant a curse and contract in his bloodline, making his descendants loyal to the Malfoy family forever. This is the lost bloodline modification magic and contract magic of the ancient times. The power of the magic contract will ensure that Filch will never have the slightest desire for you. This is the eternal sacred order I speak of. Purebloods will always be purebloods, and slaves will always be slaves. Filch obtained magic, but he also made a contract. If he betrays the Malfoy family, then the power of the contract that protected him from the curse of the unicorn bloodline will turn into an even more vicious curse, turning him into a zombie or corpse slave. Malfoy looked at Voldemort and laughed. Black Devil King? How are my methods of governance? When I become the King of Magi, I will control the Muggle society and select those Muggles who desire magic and power. I will bestow upon them a bloodline like Filch's, making the Magi to increase the population of the magic world and prosper the entire magic society. In order to prevent the magic world's resources from drying up and being misused, I will reform the magic world society. I will select those Magi who are willing to follow me and bestow upon them flags with their family insignia embroidered on them. I will divide the magic world's functions and set up 8 flags. The pureblood families will be the flag bearers, the Magi will be the flag bearers, and the transformed Muggles will be the clothes. I will distribute the magic world's resources according to their status, so that the pureblood families can prosper forever, and the clothes can only be like house elves, supporting the flag bearers and Magi. The 8 flags will have 3 upper flags, red, blue, and green. Those pureblood Magi will be in the upper 3 flags. The Malfoy family will be the leader of the 8 flags. The pureblood families close to Slytherin will be in this flag. The pureblood families of Ravenclaw will be in charge of the blue flag, while the pureblood families of Gryffindor will be in charge of the red flag. Only the Magi of the flag bearers can be appointed by the leader of the 8 flags. There are also the middle 3 flags, red, blue, and green. Non-pureblood Magi will be in the middle 3 flags, according to the Academy's preference. Finally, there are the lower 2 flags. After I rule the magic world, the mud Magi who appear again, as well as the Magi who plot against me and resist me when I control the magic world, will be in this flag. There are black flags and yellow flags. The 8 flags have different functions. The green flag will be the ruler and will be an official in the Ministry of Magic. The red flag will be the commander of the army and will help me conquer the world. The blue flag will be the intellect and will be in charge of the economy and management. The middle 3 flags will be the execution flags. They will be in charge of producing magic items, planting potions, and producing wealth. The lower 2 flags will be in charge of the magic world's lowest level of work. They will clean, work, and accept the management of the high flags. As for the clothes, they are tools, slaves, servants of the Magi, and slaves. Apart from the Magi, other intelligent magical beings will be treated as the clothes unless I allow them to carry the flag. I will use a magic contract to plant the bloodline of the 8 flags. The noblest flag-bearer bloodline will be able to use any magic and will be worshipped by the lower-level bloodlines. They will have powerful magic power. Those who are not flag-bearers can only use white magic and life magic. It will be difficult for them to use powerful black magic. The lower-level flag-bearers can only use certain types of magic related to their functions. As for the clothes, they can only use the magic their master allows. This is the eternal divine order, dividing the authority of magic and creating the power of bloodlines. Malfoy opened his arms as if to embrace the future. He said loudly, "After I, Malfoy, the order of the Magus world will be eternal and divine. There will be no more conflicts. All magi will live in peace and freedom on the path I have set for them. I will be the king of magi." Harry looked at the fanatical Malfoy and suddenly felt a chill. He felt deep despair and anger towards the magic world he had described. Harry asked in a low voice, "You mentioned the 3 academies. What about Hufflepuff?" Chapter 796. It's burning. Malfoy Sr. endured the pain and said to Narcissa Malfoy. Narcissa was completely panicked. She held her husband's wrist. The dark devil mark on it was like a soldering iron roasting Malfoy's flesh. She panicked and said, "He's summoning you. The dark devil is back. He's punishing you for your disloyalty. We have to explain and gain his forgiveness. Don't worry. Narcissa, the dark devil still needs me," Malfoy comforted her. "But I heard rumors from some very powerful people in the Ministry of Magic. You know, Narcissa, there are some pedantic old men in the Ministry of Magic. On one hand, they are hostile to Dumbledore and the half-bloods he represents. But on the other hand, they look down on the dark devil. Perhaps they are afraid, but power makes them dizzy. Cornelius Fudge, the head of the Ministry of Magic, is one of the best. They think that their power can control the dark devil and Dumbledore, the 2 most powerful wizards. But we all know that they are just parasites of power." Narcissa sneered. "Yes." Old Malfoy sighed. "But you have to admit that the tree that these parasites are rooted in, the Ministry of Magic, is deeply rooted in the world of magic. So they can always know some key things. Before the Ministry of Magic fell, they had some ability to summon the wind and rain, and they have great magical powers. So I need to please them. Their dizzy minds may not understand what those things represent. Those great magical powers can't do anything in the hands of a group of old men. So the dark devil has always looked down on them, thinking that they can't even withstand a single blow." Narcissa saw through her husband's fear. She looked straight into his eyes and asked bluntly, "So, Lucius, what did they tell you?" Lucius Malfoy was silent for a while before he said faintly, "They said that the group of Death Eaters who attacked Azkaban were no longer true Death Eaters. They betrayed Voldemort and turned to a new, more powerful dark sorcerer. That dark sorcerer tortured Voldemort in front of them, striking fear into the hearts of the Death Eaters. Most of the Death Eaters succumbed to Voldemort's power and cruelty. Your sister, Bellatrix, was executed because of her loyalty to Voldemort. What's coming might be a new Black Devil King, a new tyrant. Bellatrix!" Narcissa screamed. "How is that possible? I'm not sure it's true. The Dark Devil, he's so powerful and cruel. However, I dare not say that this is nonsense. Many pure-blood families, old friends, and in-laws of the Malfoy family have vaguely mentioned similar topics. But what is certain is that if this rumor is true, then the entire magic world will be in turmoil again." "No," Narcissa hurriedly said. "We must call Dracula back. No matter whether this news is true or not, the magic circle is going to be in chaos." "Lucius," Narcissa said. "Oui, Lucius, if only I had listened to you and let him go to Durmstrang." In the Forbidden Forest, Dracula Malfoy coldly tortured Voldemort's soul fragment in his hand. He loudly announced to Harry Potter, "How can your brain, which has been poisoned by Dumbledore, understand the true meaning of being a wizard? Wizards are supermen, or rather, only the truly great wizards are supermen. They surpass themselves and transcend the vulgar. They can fully express their self and dominate the mediocre. He is the yardstick of all laws and morals, a strong man in life. Harry Potter, what Dumbledore taught you was to make you succumb to everything set by the weak. It was you who fell into a trap and could not escape. The power of magic was limitless, and it should not be limited to a limited range. Only a true Superman is qualified to master it. For that all laws, rules, order, and morals should be ignored. Why are those mediocre people afraid of Voldemort? Because Voldemort is a superhuman and they are only the last people. Voldemort has surpassed all the restrictions of the magic world, but they are restrained and try to resist him within the boundaries of the law. So they are scattered, unable to withstand a single blow. When others blindly pursue truth and truth, remember, everything is empty. When others are restrained by laws and morals, remember, everything is allowed. The essence of a wizard is the will to power. All meaningful pursuits are the desire to rule, the desire for power. This is the essence of life and magic. All life has its will to power, but some people's will to power is weak. They are confused by the vulgar and ordinary life. Their will to power is only the will to survive. But for some people, their will to power is strong, and their lives are strong because of this. Only such people can become Superman. Harry was shocked. He raised his wand and pointed at Malfoy. Malfoy, you're crazy. Remove your weapon. Malfoy waved his wand lightly, and Harry was sent flying into the air, landing hard on the ground. At this time, Yakov and the others had heard the commotion and found Harry. They floated up, and Yakov noticed the black magic book in Malfoy's hand. He exclaimed, "The Black Scripture of the Dead? My God, there really is such a magic book." Malfoy heard his words and turned around. He stared at Yakov and sneered. "What do you know?" He opened his hand, and a cloud of black smoke shot out from Malfoy's fingertip. The unicorn corpse on the ground leaped up and charged at Yakov. The unicorn corpse had withered under the effects of magic. Its bones were thick, and the horn on its head had the light of a curse from black magic. It was extremely strong and fast, and when it charged at Yakov, it was unstoppable. The white crystal at the tip of Yakov's wand emitted a blinding white light. He slammed the wand heavily on the ground, and a powerful wave of magic exploded and shook the unicorn corpse away. Yakov shouted, "Let's go!" Without the restraint of the solar scripture. His power comes from the underworld and is endless. We are no match for him. At this moment, a ball of white light rose from the direction of the Hogwarts castle. 2 wizards with brooms were rushing over from afar. Harry scrambled to escape from the forbidden forest. At this moment, a centaur that looked like a horse rushed out from the side and carried Harry on its back. The 3 of them were carried by the centaur as they escaped from this place. Malfoy hesitated for a moment, but he did not give chase. He turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared. Someone knocked on the door of Malfoy's manor. Lucius's expression was solemn. He used magic to check, but found nothing. Narcissa panicked. Could it be them? Lucius comforted her in a low voice. It could be people from the Ministry of Magic. He hesitated for a moment and said to Narcissa, "I can't turn away people from the Ministry of Magic, and I can't ignore those Death Eaters. If I do that, Dracula will be in danger." He held his wife's hand and turned to open the door. Chapter 797. The Dark Devil. Malfoy glanced at his wife beside him when he heard this unfamiliar yet familiar name. She stared straight ahead, her face as pale as her husband's. Her long blonde hair hung down her back, but under the table, her slender fingers lightly touched his wrist. Because of Narcissa's touch, Malfoy suddenly came to his senses. He said in a low voice, "The Dark Devil." "My lord." Okay, I should go pay my respects to him. Because the Ministry of Magic blocked the news, I did not know about his return immediately. But I am loyal to him. I will go with you. His lord? Rodolphus Lestrange revealed a lively and sarcastic expression. He glanced at his sister-in-law Narcissa, who was beside him, and said in a low voice, "And you, Narcissa, come with me." Rodolphus Lestrange took out a heavy scepter made of white sandalwood with an obsidian embedded at the top. A silver fire dragon sat on top of the scepter. All the Death Eaters showed expressions of awe and fear when they saw the lively fire dragon swimming at the top of the scepter and spitting out blue flames. They respectfully surrounded the scepter, forming a circle around it one after another. They half knelt down and placed their right hands under the scepter. Rodolphus gave the Malfoys a do as I say look, then half knelt down and placed his right hand under the scepter. The Malfoys hesitated, but they imitated them and did the same. The silver fire dragon at the top of the scepter suddenly looked up at them, flapping its wings and spitting out a mouthful of flames at the obsidian at the top. Then the space with obsidian as it's cast suddenly distorted, and all the Death Eaters and the Malfoys were swallowed by the void without any resistance, disappearing on the spot. When Malfoy opened his eyes, he was already in a large house. He did not know where this was the old house of a pure-blood family. The portrait on the wall was wrapped in black cloth, and there was even a sound-muting spell cast on it. The strange scepter was in the middle of the hall, and the Death Eaters formed a circle and knelt on the ground. So it's a door key, Malfoy thought to himself as he glanced at the scepter. He felt very strange. These Death Eaters that he was very familiar with were acting very strangely unfamiliar, as if they had pledged their loyalty to a new master. Narcissa whispered in his ear, "This time the phantom shift doesn't make me feel dizzy." Malfoy was shocked. When they were teleported here by the door key, they didn't feel anything at all. It was as if their surroundings had suddenly changed. Rodolphus Lestrange led the Death Eaters and pushed the door open. Malfoy saw a very familiar figure behind the door. The figure had his back to him and was dressed in a black robe. He stood in the middle of the hall, like the owner, as if waiting for someone. Malfoy could not help but exclaim, "Eugene Bach!" Malfoy quickly scanned the area to make sure he didn't see anyone resembling Voldemort. Boggenbork heard his voice and turned around with a smile. "Long time no see, Mr. Malfoy. The quality of the black magic items you sold to me last time was excellent, as expected of Voldemort's personal collection." Malfoy's expression changed drastically. He quickly looked to his left and right. Rodolphus and the other Death Eaters did not fly into a rage. They had been bowing their heads ever since they pushed open the door. They were very respectful and silent. Malfoy was a little unsure of the situation. He hesitated. "I have always maintained my loyalty to the Dark Devil. For his great cause, I hid in the Ministry of Magic. When the Dark Devil suffered a setback, I had to protect myself for the sake of the great plan and wait for the right time. Fortunately, the heavens did not betray me. The Dark Devil finally broke free, and I came here to offer my loyalty." Boggenbork calmly said loyalty, "But I have a question for you. Lucius, is the Malfoy family loyal to Voldemort or the Dark Devil? Are you loyal to the Strong, or are you loyal to Tom Riddle, who died a horrible death?" Malfoy's face instantly turned pale. He remembered the suspicious rumor. At this time, Boggenbork had already arrived in front of Narcissa. He called out, "I'm not like that Nazi Voldemort, who doesn't even have a cup of black tea when his loyal subordinate comes to visit." Gulp. He called out, and an ugly house elf appeared behind him using phantom shift. The house elf called Gru stole a few glances at Malfoy and his wife before asking respectfully, "Master, what are your orders?" "Give Madame Malfoy a cup of black tea." Boggenbork said calmly, "Narcissa, I killed your sister. There's one less living member of the Black family I'm loyal to." Malfoy stammered. His eyes wandered around the group of former Death Eaters, and his trembling voice could not hide the anxiety in his heart. "Master, if you're stronger than the Dark Devil—" "No, Voldemort. What reason do I have not to follow you?" "Very good." Boggen. "No," Chenong nodded. "Old Malfoy, you should have guessed that I'm not the person this face represents. Boggenbork and everything this name represents were taken from that poor man by me. Malfoy, can you guess where the original Mr. Boggen is now?" Malfoy broke out in a cold sweat. He unexpectedly noticed that the house elf called Gru was trembling so hard that he could barely hold the teapot in his hand. His eyes were filled with tears, and his body was shaking like a sieve. Mr. Boggin had obviously noticed this as well. Gru trembled even harder, and the Death Eaters all lowered their heads. Their fear was so obvious that the air was suffocating. "Gru!" Mr. Boggin called out. Gru trembled in fear, and the teapot in his hand almost fell to the ground. He fell in front of Boggin and screamed, "Master! Forgive me, Master! Don't be afraid." Mr. Boggin said, "Gru, I'm going to return your name to you for now, because in a while I need all of you to do something big." After Sirius and Tom Riddle escaped from Azkaban, Sirius went to warn the Ministry of Magic, which attracted the attention of some people in the Ministry of Magic. However, another group, led by our Minister of Magic, Foggy, refused to accept this fact. On one hand, he asked Dumbledore for help, and on the other hand, he wanted to manipulate the Azkaban incident into a prisoner's escape in order to maintain order in his rule. The world has changed, but our Mr. Foggy refused to accept this fact. He even slandered poor Sirius as a fugitive, and not long ago, Sirius, who wanted to warn the Ministry of Magic again, was unfortunately trapped by the Auror. Tonight he will be tried by Wizengarmo, and Dumbledore will be his defender. Now, my friends, we must force the Ministry of Magic to accept this fact. The new Black Devil has descended. Chapter 798. Chun-Ong arrived at a small alley with Bujin's body. The alley included a few dilapidated offices, a closed bar, and a few shops that were obviously under Muggle banishing spells. Chun-Ong turned into an old phone booth. He held the scepter that had left a deep impression on old Malfoy and walked into the narrow phone booth. The phone hung crookedly on the wall. The wall was badly covered with graffiti, and there were even a few pieces of glass missing from the phone booth. It was as if the phone had been ravaged. It was hard to tell if it could still be used. Chun-Ong picked up the phone and dialed 62442. He heard an impatient female voice say, "Welcome to the Ministry of Magic. Please state your name and occupation." Bujin Burke, a magic item merchant. Looking for the fake defensive spells and protective equipment inspection and confiscation office. I have something to discuss with them. Thank you, the female voice said coldly. Please take the badge and tie it to the front of your robe. There was a clicking sound, and a square silver badge appeared on the coin slide on the phone booth. The words Bujin Burke, Fake Defensive Spells and Protective Equipment Inspection and Confiscation Office were written on it. Chun-Ong could see that there was a hidden magic mark on the badge. The Ministry of Magic could probably use this to determine the location of the visitor and phantom shift to where the badge was at any time. Chun-Ong cast a confusion charm on the mark and directed it to the Fake Defensive Spells and Protective Equipment Inspection and Confiscation Office. At this time, the female voice said again, "Visitor from the Ministry of Magic, you need to undergo an inspection and register your wand at the security office. The security office is in the innermost part of the lobby." Then the phone booth sank like an elevator. When it opened again, it was already the 8th floor underground. The atrium was filled with people. Wizards came and went everywhere. Wizards in different attire constantly flashed from the flying nets on both sides. There was an anti-phantom spell here, but Chun-Ong easily dispelled it. He left the staff in the atrium, stuck it in the middle of the crowd, and walked straight to the elevator. A wizard behind him, curiously, tried to pull out the staff, but the silver fire dragon on the tip of the staff spat out a stream of flames at him. The staff was as firm as a nail. Chun-Ong passed by a gorgeous fountain formed by a group of golden statues. Chun-Ong glanced at it. This should be the famous Magic Brothers fountain. There were some silver coins thrown by wizards in the pool, and a sign said, "All the profits from the Magic Brothers fountain will be donated to St. Mungo Magic Hospital for the treatment of magic diseases and injuries." Chun-Ong casually threw a gold coin into the fountain. The shining gold coin was engraved with a unique magic mark, used for spatial positioning and plane marking. It would provide Qianong with the spatial coordinates and reference data of the Ministry of Magic. There were too many protective spells here, which seriously interfered with the normal plane positioning. It was easy to teleport 1 or 2 people, but what Qianong wanted to do today was not as simple as teleporting a few people. He claimed to be attacking the Ministry of Magic, but if that was the case, why did he have to do it himself? Even his former Death Eaters could do such a small thing. Qianong's body was surrounded by a bright magical glow. Anchor the bottom plane structure. Analyze the spatial hierarchy structure. Counteract the magic interference. Eliminate the interference of the interference source on the data. Determine the plane coordinates and space structure. Prepare the magic shield. Structure protection. Qianong did not go to a safe place. The insignificant power in the powerful magic light around him made him completely ignored by the others. In the void that the wizards could not see, the arcane energy interweaved into complex magic circuits. The Ministry of Magic had accumulated countless complex spells over the course of history, and there were countless secrets and secret rooms. All of this was seen by Qianong. The traceless extension spells were like stars in the sky, and all kinds of strange spells from ancient and modern times. It was not hard to imagine why a few ministers of magic had died in their posts. The secrets here were even more shocking to Hogwarts. There were countless things that were not illegal, those that were allowed to be illegal, those that were specially approved by the ministers, and those that were illegal in private. There were also undeniable black magic and witchcraft curses. There were too many secrets hidden in this place. If knowledge was defined as wealth, then this place was where 70% of the wealth of the British magic world was gathered. But now, Qianong had used an unimaginable arcane spell to precisely protect this place. He had mastered all the secrets here. Qianong took a step forward and appeared in the middle of a group of old men in red. The minister of the Ministry of Magic, Cornelius Biggie, stood in front of a podium not far away. This seemed to be the Wysengamo court. Sirius, with messy hair and dirty clothes, was pressed on the bench, and Dumbledore was pacing around him. Sirius Black, you were accused of using cruel means to kill 12 muggles and betraying your good friends, James Potter and his wife. Guy G announced coldly in a high-pitched and bureaucratic tone. No, I didn't betray James. Sirius roared angrily. It was Peter Pettigrew who betrayed them. He is still hiding beside Harry in the form of a mouse. That is his animagus. Silence! Biggie shouted. When I state the case, without allowing you to refute. Please keep quiet, Mr. Sirius Black. This is not the dining table of your Black family, and the Black family is not allowed to talk at the dining table. Everyone knew that Sirius was a traitor of the Black family. Such a clever joke immediately made the old men on the bench smile tacitly. After a series of sensational crimes, Biggie announced, obviously, Sirius is a cruel and cunning criminal. After he escaped from Azkaban, he has been trying to create panic so that his brothers in Azkaban can get away with it. He even created many frightening rumors, such as the mysterious man has been resurrected, or another black devil, an evil black wizard that exists in his imagination, has taken control of Azkaban. But the conclusion of the Ministry of Magic's investigation is that a group of escaped prisoners occupied Azkaban. They colluded with the Dementors who are guarding them and used the geographical advantage of Azkaban to hide themselves. And Sirius is their leader. Even the means of committing the crime is because he is an illegal animagus. Chapter 799. Gaggy's words angered Sirius. He struggled to break free from the spell that bound him to the chair. At the same time he roared, Pettigrew is a traitor. He's Voldemort's lackey, a despicable and shameless fellow. Moreover, the magic world is about to face a catastrophe. You're still here, still trying to cover your eyes and pretend that nothing has happened. But the Black Devil and his lackeys will let you know that's a big mistake. Wizards, be it the British or the other countries, Brazil, Bulgaria, France, Japan, they're all facing a hopeless threat. We're about to face perhaps the most terrifying and powerful Black Devil in history. I escaped from Azkaban, which he occupied, to tell you the truth. Voldemort was powerless against him. His soul was used to torture and conduct magic experiments. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the inhumane former Black Devil begging bitterly in Azkaban's prison. He begged the new Black Devil King not to use his soul to conduct those terrifying experiments. The contents included nightmares and some very terrifying black magic. I saw him transform Voldemort's soul with the Black Devil King's, turning him into an evil spirit known as Haridi. Then he forced the evil and power in his body to give birth to a brand new evil soul, Haridi. I saw him stitch up the bodies of trolls, turning them into huge, mindless zombies under the illumination of a terrifying evil power. I saw him transform the bodies of fairies, using their blood to give birth to a kind of gray skin, thin and tall. Only the face still retained part of the fairy's long ears. I saw him send his evil subordinates to capture the giants and install huge mechanical limbs made of steel on them. He transformed their organs into black magic items, giving them infinite strength and bloodthirsty violence. He extended the castle where Azkaban was located into a huge prison, where many magical creatures and human-like races were imprisoned. He created many new, brutal, and powerful deployments. I saw the army of vampires and werewolves patrolling the prison. They had changed beyond recognition. There were even dragons hovering above Azkaban. They had become the army of the Black Devil King. Sirius tried his best to describe the terrifying scene he had seen, but Guy G was getting impatient. He hammered down the gavel in his hand and said with an arrogant expression, "Enough, enough! You murder with a mouth full of lies." Gigi stood up and said to Sirius in a tone of bored haughtiness, "Now the truth is out. No one will believe your made-up, ridiculous story. The Ministry of Magic has confirmed that a group of dark wizards have taken control of Azkaban. They have spread rumors about the new Dark Devil King to make the Ministry of Magic flustered. We were once confused by this rumor, the rumor that you spread, but fortunately we caught you, the mastermind of the rebellion in Azkaban. You colluded with the Death Eaters who were loyal to the Unknowns and managed to escape the trial of the Ministry of Magic to create this sensational rebellion. Now that we've caught you, it means that we're not far from finding your hidden lair. The Ministry of Magic will quell your rebellion like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves." Sirius stared at him, his anger almost overflowing. The jury behind Foggy was also whispering. At this moment, Dumbledore cleared his throat and the jury quieted down again. "In fact, I think we should stop arguing for now and hear if Sirius has any further evidence." Foggy's round face relaxed, as if someone had sucked the air out of it. He stared at Dumbledore for a moment, then, as if someone had pulled him back, he said, "I'm afraid we don't need to hear any more of Sirius's ridiculous claims. I want to deal with it quickly. I have evidence." Sirius suddenly spoke. He looked at Foggy with a malicious, even gloating look. That fierce look was full of hostility, and he said with a mocking tone, "Just like Voldemort, this Black Devil King also put a curse on his name, and it's not a small one like Voldemort's, it's even more terrifying, a curse that even the Death Eaters fear. You just need to say that name to me, and the truth will be revealed." Foggy shouted, "Drag him away and put him on trial. He should have died long ago." Dumbledore wanted to get up to object, but Sirius stared at Foggy with anger and hatred in his eyes. "No trial. Foggy, I've never been put on trial, not the last time I entered Azkaban. And I've already provided evidence, but you coward, say that name with me if you have the ability, in the name of the Blake family." Sirius' expression twisted at the mention of the family name that was a disgrace to him. "In the name of the last member of the Blake family, I swear that everything I say is true and reliable." The jury was in an uproar, and many people gasped when they heard that ancient family name. Foggy stomped his feet angrily. Everyone knows you're the unfilial son of Blake. You have no sense of honor for that family at all. But when you sentence a Blake to death when he claims that he's a Blake, you have to take it seriously. Otherwise, you're insulting the Blake family name. Foggy was shocked and angry. Ridiculous. But out of respect for the law, I'll listen to your absurd remarks for now. He was a little uneasy and kept wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. The Blake family had many in-laws, and even he had to consider the consequences of rashly killing the last Blake. He couldn't not give Sirius a chance to argue for himself. It would be bad for his career. Sirius happily uttered the name with absolute anger and courage. Morgoth! Without anyone noticing, the moon that suddenly appeared in the sky slowly turned blood red. The weather window in the Ministry of Law, which should have been irrelevant, became exactly the same as the outside world. Dumbledore felt an intimidating and deep aura suddenly appear in the courtroom of Wiesengamo, and the light around Sirius dimmed a little. Foggy was silent for a long time. When he saw that Sirius didn't change after saying the name, he smiled smugly. He opened his mouth, and Dumbledore wanted to stop him. "Don't do this. Cornelius." Cornelius Foggy said impatiently, "It has to be done. Then the murderer Sirius won't have a reason to concoct his absurd lies." He smiled smugly and cunning, and before Dumbledore could speak, he quickly said the name. Morgoth. Dumbledore took out his wand and quickly chanted, "Call the guardian of the gods!" A silver light shot from the top of his wand to the heads of the crowd, but it still couldn't dispel the darkness that enveloped Sirius and Foggy. Sirius laughed wildly. "Come to hell with me, Foggy, you disgusting bureaucrats." The darkness in the void was like a huge mouth, swallowing Sirius, who was sitting on the bench. Dumbledore was powerless to stop it, and could only watch as the member of the Order of the Phoenix fell into the abyss with a strong hatred for the Ministry of Magic. Foggy screamed, "Help me! Help me! Dumbledore!" He opened his mouth wide, the fat on his face trembling with fear. The members of the jury of the Wiesenjammer Court, the most respected old wizards in the British magic circle, took out their wands, trying to stop the minister of the Ministry of Magic from being murdered in front of their eyes. But the darkness was like a bottomless abyss, and its power was far more terrifying than any wizard could imagine. At this time, Dumbledore was already very convinced of the information brought by Sirius. Foggy wailed and screamed as he disappeared into the darkness that enveloped him. Chin-Ong watched the absurd play in silence. He whispered, "Now this funny show is finally over. It's time for my show to begin." The complex arcane runes that enveloped his body lit up slightly. In the hall of the Ministry of Magic, the wizards who were coming and going looked curiously at the scepter in the middle. Suddenly, the fire dragon at the top spewed out a huge flame that surrounded several meters around it. Chapter 800. Shouts and ear-piercing screams erupted as the wizards tried their best to escape from the Death Eaters. It was a mess, and not a single person had the courage to pull out their wands. It was as if the wands on their belts and sleeves were just wooden sticks. The Death Eaters turned into black smoke and shuttled around the hall, destroying the fireplaces and door keys on both sides. "Go!" a man with a hoarse voice shouted. "For the glory of Master, go and cast the soul-reaping curse on the officials of the Ministry of Magic. Ignore those fools. Our target is the Ministry of Magic. Right now, most of the Auror and important figures are on the 9th floor to participate in the trial of Sirius. Now, Lucius, go and destroy the elevator from the 9th floor and organize the Auror reinforcements. Rodolphus, go and control the Magic Transport Department. Monitor and control the Flying Network and Phantom Shift. The rest of you follow me." The owner of the voice, the Death Eater Yaxley, took the lead. Beside him was the cruel Antonin Dolohov. He led the army of Soul Eaters and continuously dealt with the Auror that came to stop them. Endless streams of Soul Eaters poured out from the void with the scepter as the center. Their numbers were more than 10 times that of Azkaban. This was thanks to Chin Ang's research on the Dementor's reproduction through fission, and another experiment based on Voldemort's soul fragment, Haridi's research data, research on the Dementor's plant-based cuttings and soul cracking. By torturing former Death Eaters, he obtained high-quality negative emotions and stimulated the Dementor's fission larvae to mature. Antonin Dolohov was cruel by nature. He was what Dumbledore had said, a Death Eater who was naturally cruel and attracted to a leader who could teach them a higher form of cruelty. The Soul Eaters were attacking everywhere, and the Death Eaters were also casting the soul-drilling curse on every wizard they could see. Such a large-scale attack left the Auror of the Ministry of Magic at a loss. They were unable to rescue the Magi who were attacked by the Soul Eaters, and it was also difficult for them to organize a large force to deal with the main force of the Death Eaters. With Lucius Malfoy taking control of the Magical Transportation Department, all the fireplaces connected to the flying network were disconnected. They were connected to a newly built fireplace in Azkaban. Hence, green flames flickered continuously from a large number of fireplaces on both sides, bringing out malevolent and strange black magic creatures, one after another. The vampire army merged with the Death Eater army, while the werewolves, giants, and evil spirits blocked the Auror reinforcements. The central courtyard of the Ministry of Magic was the first to fall, and it became the transfer point for the Dark Army under Chin Ang's control. An endless stream of troops under Chin Ang's command were sent over from Azkaban. The Magic Sports Department on the upper level collapsed at the first touch, and the Magic Transportation Department on the 6th level was targeted by the Death Eaters, led by Lucius. They took control of the surveillance spells of the Flying Network and Phantom Shift in the entire British magic world, and began to shut down the public fireplaces that the Auror needed to use when they received the Ministry of Magic's request for help. The International Magic Cooperation Department on the 5th level fell under the attack of the Soul Eaters in less than 10 minutes, and the Department of Magical Animals on the 4th level followed, closely behind. It was controlled by the army of vampires and werewolves, but they bought time for the remaining Auror and officials of the Ministry of Magic. The Minister's Office and the Auror of the Magic Disaster Department all received the news and retreated to the 2nd level, the Magic Law Enforcement Department. Relying on this largest, most well-preserved, and strongest department, they resisted. They gave up most of the areas in the Minister's Office on the 1st level and the Magic Disaster Department on the 3rd level, concentrating at the core and relying on the protective magic there to set up a position. But an important reason why they were still resisting stubbornly was that the main force of the Dark Army was mainly attacking the Department of Mystery Affairs on the 9th level and the Trial Room on the 10th level. That was where the Wisengarmo Court was located, and they were currently judging Sirius there. Just now, Chief Wizard Dumbledore watched as the Minister of the Ministry of Magic was swallowed by the Void. Dumbledore stood at the very front of the Auror army. They were almost face to face with the Death Eaters. After he received news of the attack on the Ministry of Magic, he hurriedly rushed to the central courtyard. However, those black figures appeared and blocked their path. The building of the Ministry of Magic was very tall and had a huge dome, just like the underground stations and sewers in London. Under the dome, Soul Eaters floated in the air like a tide, and below them were werewolves, vampires, trolls, giants, and Death Eaters. On Dumbledore's side, countless wands were raised and pointed at the hearts of the Death Eaters, and the Death Eaters also raised their wands. The werewolves roared, the vampires turned into bats, and the giants carried huge thorny chains. Hagrid wailed as he saw the giants he was familiar with his uncle. Huge chains pierced through the giants' shoulders into their bodies, and they held huge siege hammers with iron skulls embedded in their heads. "Close the doors and windows." Antonin Dolohov closed the door to the other rooms of the Department of Mystery Affairs and said coldly, "Pay attention. The Black Devil wants to completely occupy this place. The secrets left behind by the Ministry of Magic will all become your spoils of war." Dumbledore said to the Wisengarmo jury behind him, "Now, Sirius has finally proven his words. He is a hero who escaped from Azkaban and told us about the Black Devil. Now, we will fight to the death with the Death Eaters. Chun-Ang's figure suddenly appeared in the middle of them, his back facing the Death Eaters, and he was still using the identity of Bujin Bork. Bujin Bork? Dumbledore opened his mouth in surprise and asked in a low voice, "It's you?" "No," Chun-Ang said calmly. "He is just a facade, shell. The one standing here is the new Black Devil, the master of the dark and evil force, the one the elves call the great enemy of the dark, Mirko. But usually those who fear him will call him Morgoth. You are Morgoth." Amelia Bowens, the director of the Department of Magic Law Enforcement, questioned. "I am Morgoth, but Morgoth is not me." Chun-Ang sighed. He looked at Dumbledore and asked, "Look out the window. What can you see?" Dumbledore turned his head to look at the window that showed the weather conditions with magic. Looking out from the window, it was already dark, and the blood-red moon was suspended in the sky, shining on the earth. But in fact, although the Ministry of Magic was underground, it was daytime. "What you see is Morgoth. He is the star of Mirko, the tide of dark force, the well of eternity, the star soul of darkness, the Sith, the source of endless magic, the abyss, and evil itself." Chun-Ang said calmly, "He is a god, a wizard, or a great arcanist. He is the lord of the dark world in the universe, and also the lord of the void. You think that Morgoth is an evil dark wizard who wants to rule the world of magic like Voldemort. But in fact, Morgoth is just a phenomenon. He is like the sun, existing everywhere. Morgoth is the sun, and I am only his light. You can block the sun, but you can never, ever destroy the sun. Besides, didn't you see him just now?" "Just now?" "When Sirius said his name, the thing that appeared was also him, right?" Dumbledore asked. Chun-Ang nodded slowly. In fact, Morgoth was not as mysterious as he made it out to be. He was just an arcane device that was 50 million kilometers away from Earth, the size of a planet, and connected to a dark plane that had no concept of time. He used its quantum properties to extract zero-point energy from the void. However, this energy, well known as the Well of Eternity, was controlled by a trace of divinity from a god from another world. The Morgoth of this world was the dark consciousness that ruled the Well of Eternity. In the universe, it was just an ordinary celestial body similar to a black hole. One of Chun-Ang's original bodies could destroy thousands of them in a single war. Chapter 801. Do you want to kill them all? The Black Devil King? Antonin Dolohov asked excitedly. Chun-Ang gave Dumbledore and the others a deep look and said calmly, "No, there is no need. In Morgoth's eyes, they're no different from you. The current, you will be them in the future. Remember, Morgoth wasn't a demon king who controlled everyone physically, but a wizard who ruled over the minds of others. Whether it is you Death Eaters or the Ministry of Magic and Order of the Phoenix, it is all the same. I have never sought to enslave you physically, but to make you approach me spiritually." Dumbledore shook his head and said, "That is impossible. The Order of the Phoenix will never submit to the Dark Devil's rule." "Nothing is impossible, Dumbledore," Chun-Ang said gently. "Morgoth is black magic itself. As long as the war is not over, as long as disputes continue, as long as the hearts of the mages are still pursuing power and carrying hatred, they are getting closer to me. So, Dumbledore, this is why we need the Death Eaters. I do not care if they can defeat you." When Chun-Ang said this, there was a small commotion behind him. "As long as they can defeat peace and order," Chun-Ang added. "After obtaining my support, the Death Eaters will completely destroy the order of the world of magic, giving me the opportunity to create a new order on the ruins of this order, an order that meets Morgoth's needs. There is no need to doubt Morgoth's power. He does indeed have this ability. This is my goal. Dumbledore, what you have always wanted to know. When the Order of the Phoenix and the ordinary wizards of the world of magic find that the order you represent, Dumbledore, cannot protect them, they will pick up their wands again, Approach me and pursue power and truth. At that time, the power of magic will no longer be limited, and everyone will study black magic, whether to protect their loved ones or to achieve their own ambitions. At that time, the thing that the wizard world uses to protect itself, the International Wizard Confidentiality Act, will become a piece of paper. In the end, the Muggles will discover you, and the rampant black magic will inevitably cause some wizards to harm the Muggles, and that kind of harm will inevitably cause the Muggles to hate wizards. When this hatred erupts, the entire wizard world will face destruction. In the end, you can only approach me. Chen Ang's voice was calm, but it made Dumbledore and the people behind him shudder. He said slowly, "Do you think you are going against me? No, you are fighting against yourself, against the natural law of survival of the fittest. As long as the freedom of wizards to learn magic is not restricted, then sooner or later I will rule everything. Because Morgatha's magic is more powerful than yours. Now, I am here to destroy this shackle and also to make you realize this point. Only by making you realize how weak you are will you know that power is indeed precious and magic can fulfill all your desires. So you should pursue it." In the end, Chen Ong turned around and his body turned into a wisp of black smoke, slowly disappearing in front of everyone. The Death Eaters raised their wands, and the members of the Ministry of Magic and the Order of the Phoenix behind Dumbledore also raised their wands. Dumbledore opened his mouth, trying to stop them, but in the end he did not say anything. "Do you want the Ministry of Magic and the Order of the Phoenix to surrender?" This thought flashed past Dumbledore's mind, but he finally realized that the struggle against evil could not be stopped, and another important war was in everyone's heart. That was the struggle between good and evil, the struggle between desire and restraint. That was the war in everyone's heart. In this war, what he wanted to do was to let the Order of the Phoenix and the wizards of the magic world not learn from evil, but to win. He needed to unite the good wizards of this world and not destroy their own martial arts. Chen Ong looked at all this silently, and he said in a low voice, "It is easy to destroy the Nazis, but it is difficult to destroy the war. It is easy to destroy the Death Eaters, but it is impossible to destroy Morgoth. It is difficult for a ruling entity to last for a long time. Based on the experience on Earth, it can only last for 800 years at most, but a spiritual entity can often rule for a long time. This is what makes religion so terrifying. The uncivilized magic civilization has a pitiful chance of winning against the gods. A solid political entity can destroy its internal rotten parts and resist external threats, but its ability to resist the invasion of spiritual beliefs and ideology is very weak, unless it also has a mature set of ideology to resist. Morgoth represented the magic society Darwinism of unlimited magic, and everything is illusory, everything is permissible. This has a great impact on the democratic politics that the magic world learned from the Muggle society, because the magic world is a world where power belongs to itself. Its ruling system does not match its actual situation. In the history of human civilization, the development of a democratic society, in addition to the fact that the power of the organization and system is far greater than the power of the unorganized, the progress of human spiritual civilization is also thanks to science. Only science, or the system of seeking knowledge known as arcane magic in the magic civilization, can resist the destruction of civilization by religion. The biggest weakness of the world of magic is that it does not have a system to fight against religion and ignorance. Therefore, its democracy has no foundation at all. Morgatha's experiment seems to be proving this point. Using social Darwinism to reselect the civilization form of the world of magic seems to have caused some interesting changes in the world of magic. Chen Ong recorded in his notebook that in the spacious hall of the Department of Mystery Affairs, the Death Eaters and the Ministry of Magic, represented by Dumbledore, engaged in a life-and-death battle. Poisonous dust! All of a sudden, Auguste Rookwood made his move. Using his mana, he conjured a handful of powder that flew in all directions. This powder was made to mimic the powder of a poisonous moth, causing a strong allergic reaction to the respiratory tract. A group of Auror from the Ministry of Magic fell to the ground, clutching their throats in pain. Clean it up. Dumbledore's powerful magic caused the magic-resistant dust to dissipate into thin air. Thunder and lightning. The tip of Antonin Dolahov's wand released a blinding chain of lightning, piercing through a few Auror in the blink of an eye. However, he himself was almost hit by Amelia's disarm curse. The powerful magic resistance of the vampires and werewolves allowed them to withstand the curse, giving the Auror of the Ministry of Magic a painful blow. Wave after wave, more and more Dementors and creatures of black magic rushed in from all directions. Dumbledore saw that there was no backup and shouted to the people behind him, "The Auror and I will hold them off. The rest of you, take the wounded and retreat." At the same time, the entire building of the Ministry of Magic was gradually shrouded in a thick layer of shadow. Dumbledore found that his surroundings seemed to be losing color, and the entire space seemed to be falling into a bottomless abyss. The bodies of the Auror around him were already grayish-white, just like the people in old photographs. Dumbledore quickly understood and said to the Auror, "We no longer have any hope of victory. We need to retreat quickly. This place is being dragged into the world, controlled by the Black Devil. If we don't escape quickly, then we will fall into darkness like Sirius and Foggy. We can still control some of the Ministry of Magic's defensive spells, allowing us to phantom shift out of here. There shouldn't be a problem." Amelia replied. "Then let's go," Dumbledore ordered. He stood at the back alone, facing the grinning Death Eaters. He switched to the Patronus. The Phoenix flew from behind and fused with the Patronus above his head. The Phoenix let out a loud cry, and intense flames and the silver-white energy of the Patronus forced the Death Eaters to retreat. Finally, in a distortion, Dumbledore disappeared, and the position where the Auror of the Ministry of Magic was also empty. The Death Eaters looked at each other, and Antonin Dolohov vigilantly looked to the world that was gradually losing color and turning pale. He ordered, "Go! This place is falling into the world of darkness, controlled by the Black Devil." Chapter 802. Chun-Ong stood in front of the Mystery Affairs Department of the Ministry of Magic. He walked down from the elevator and pushed the door open. Behind the door was a huge circular hall with a high dome. The damage caused by the recent battle was still there. The light in the surroundings was stagnant, showing the gray and withered swamp. The destruction and ruins caused by the battle were like a shadow in the river of time, or like a yellowed old photo recording that moment. Some of the Auror who could not retreat in time were forgotten here. Some of them opened their mouths, wanting to scream. Some had hideous expressions, and some had frozen expressions of fear before they died. However, they did not die, but were forgotten by time. This was the Well of Eternity, a transfer station to the dark plane that had no concept of time and space. If Chun-Ong wanted to, he could make time flow in this place. This place was located in the gap between the real world and the dark planes, such as the spiritual world. It had very strange physical characteristics. The part of the Ministry of Magic that was devoured was only a drop in the bucket here. Chun-Ong gently floated in the void in front of him, and the destruction caused by the battle returned to its original state as if time and space had been reversed. By the time the dust settled, everything had returned to its original state. The door, the ceiling, the tiles on the floor, everything was black. In the gray and white hue of the whole space, it seemed exceptionally remote. Some doors without handles were installed at intervals around the walls, and the walls were decorated with pale candlesticks that emitted a deathly white light. From beginning to end, the surroundings remained absolutely silent, as if the concept of sound did not exist in this world. Chun-Ong stepped into a room. It was a rectangular room, and it was empty inside. The golden chandelier hanging down from the ceiling emitted a pale light, making the room look even more empty. At the very center of the room, there was a huge glass bucket filled with dark green liquid, and some pearl-white brain matter and brain tissue were swimming in it. The Hall of the Brain hides the research of the world of magic on the brain. Chun-Ong looked at the strange brain matter that had been animated by magic. In his arcane vision, the flickering souls of these brains, and in his electromagnetic vision, the brain waves they emitted told Chun-Ong that the Ministry of Magic had used some method to keep these brains still thinking. "Brain in a jar," Chun-Ong said in a low voice. "Interesting. It smells like the brain of the Mind Stealer." The scene reminded Chun-Ong of the favorite brain of the Sichuan hot pot. The white brain floated in the bright red pot, showing the unique taste of food of the foodie empire. It was an evil art that even the Mind Stealer would admire. Chun-Ong had always wanted to put chili, pepper, onion, ginger, and garlic in the brain of the Mind Stealer and eat it in a pot of Sichuan red pot. Unfortunately, in the time of Faerun World, Chun-Ong could not let himself go and enjoy the present, and missed the many delicacies of the continent of Faerun Stealer. The Cantonese blood was stirring in Chun-Ang's body. Chun-Ong took a step forward and left the Hall of the Brain that hid many evil little secrets of the Ministry of Magic. In the next room, all kinds of clocks and watches filled the entire space. They should be ticking and ticking, but in this world, all the clocks and watches had stopped moving, as the folds of space under dimensional dimensions. No one in this world knew time better than Chun-Ong. He looked at the clocks and watches of different sizes with interest. They represented everything and different times. In the scientific world, time was meaningless without a frame of reference. In the world of magic, sorcerers had to use such means to scratch the surface. Every clock here represented time in a frame of reference. In the world of a certain sorcerer, the time of a bolt of lightning returned to the past through a time converter. The messy and complicated clocks vaguely depicted the time scale of everything on this planet, but it was meaningless. Chun-Ong looked at the door in the Hall of Time. He took a step forward and entered the door. Inside, towering shelves filled the entire space. On the shelves, there were countless large and small crystal balls. Chun-Ong raised his hand, and the tall dome emitted a gentle white light, illuminating the place. This was the Hall of Prophecy, where all the prophecies accumulated by the British magic world were stored. No matter whether those prophecy sorcerers are reliable or not with their magic power, what they capture is the track of fate. Hidden in this hall are all the secrets about time and fate in the entire British magic world. God knows how dangerous this is. Even if the wizard or witch who prophesied only wanted to know what his friend had for dinner tonight, it's also a secret about the coordinates and the track of fate in that timeline. In the world of Mount Shu, such a thing is even more dreadful than a person's horoscope. It can allow a seasoned old devil to infect the entire world of magic in Britain and sacrifice all the living wizards here into devils as offerings to impeach the extraterrestrial devils. That's right. Chun-Ong waved his hand slightly, and a crystal ball flew out from under the label with the name Harry Potter on it. This is the fate of the Savior. Chun-Ong calmly said, in the entire plot world, the most important quest item in the established direction. The prophecy crystal ball that represents the fate of Harry Potter. The identity of the Savior. The Potter couple died because of this. Dumbledore chose to die, and Voldemort perished because of this. The Lord God seemed to have transmitted some sort of quest prompt to his ear, but Chun-Ong ignored it. If Voldemort wants to defy the heavens and change his fate, this is a very important thing, but for me, it's useless. On the contrary, Chun-Ong summoned a few crystal balls. The prophecies about the 4 founders of Hogwarts. The prophecy about the first person Dumbledore defeated, the Black Devil, and his various emotional entanglements. The prophecy about Newt Scalman, the author of Where Are the Amazing Animals in New York. These water droplets, plucked from the river of time and fate, could allow Chun-Ong to swim in the right direction and reach the period of time in the past. But Chun-Ong was not interested in this. He increasingly felt that as he approached the origin of the truth of all things, things became more and more boring as a result. He now wanted to be a fisherman in the upper reaches of the river of time. He interfered with the predetermined fate of the fish, causing countless variables, and observed the endless and unpredictable changes of the future from the upper reaches of the river of time. This was a kind of study of the plot plane created by the Lord God space. By intercepting the timeline, the Lord God stole the information and data, origin and laws of a universe. And through the study of the Lord God's ring of time, Chun-Ong revealed the secrets of the Lord God himself and further secrets of the timeline. Chun-Ong put the crystal ball back in place, turned around, and left the prophecy hall. As he left, the dome of white light above his head gradually darkened, and an inexplicable darkness called Morgoth slowly enveloped the prophecy hall. Through the prophecies preserved by countless crystal balls, the will and power from Morgoth could penetrate the fate of the person represented by the trajectory of fate recorded in those crystal balls, and even into the past timeline represented by those old crystal balls. Chapter 803. Ronan, is that you? Harry crouched on the centaur's back and called out. The centaur carrying him replied in a low voice, "Recently, the moon in the sky has become redder and redder. Today, Mars has approached the brightest star in the Scorpio constellation. This is a symbol of disaster, Harry. A disaster even greater than 12 years ago. You saved us, Ronan." Harry did not understand the strange astrology that centaurs believed in. "Malfoy almost killed us." Another unicorn has met with misfortune. Harry's voice became deeper as he spoke. An unusual change has occurred to the moon. Ronan rarely spoke more human words. You humans did not notice, but we centaurs could sense it. This is because we always look towards the sky, while you humans pay too much attention to the things in front of you. That is why we discovered that last night a huge problem occurred to the moon. Was it caused by Malfoy? Harry could not forget Malfoy's evil thoughts. No, he is only an insignificant star in the sky. What we want to talk about is the problem with the moon. The centaur's most intelligent high priest found out through astrology that an astonishing evil power has sprouted from the moon. This power is too terrifying. What happened 12 years ago only caused Mars to brighten up a little. But today, the comet passed through the sun, and Mars guarded the heart. Harry saw Ronan turn his head. Hogwarts Castle was not far away. He said to Harry, "This is an unprecedented disaster. Some centaurs believe that this is a problem of you humans. But I believe that the stars tell us that no one can escape from this disaster. This makes us not dare to keep our mouths shut and not tell you the secret we learned from the stars. Let's go." Ronan bid farewell to Harry. "There's not much time left for you." Harry thought he was talking about Hogwarts breakfast, because the sky was about to brighten. But he felt that it was not just that, because Ronan's face carried a complicated expression. "Harry, let's go. If the professor catches us, we're done for." Ron said in a panic. Hermione also held Harry's hand and bid farewell to the centaur. By the time they returned to Hogwarts, the sky was already beginning to brighten. Harry suddenly turned his head to the other two and said, "We can't just go back like this." "What happened today? We must tell Dumbledore and the professors. Malfoy has gone mad. He's learning terrifying black magic and even killed a unicorn." "Are you crazy? That'll get us all fired." Ron couldn't believe it. Was this the same Harry who had been messing around with him? "Harry's right." Hermione agreed with Harry. "Malfoy's behavior is very dangerous and has crossed the line. We should do our best to stop it. In Ron's opinion, they won't believe it." Complaining, Harry dragged them to the headmaster's office. He wanted to see if Dumbledore had returned. The castle was silent at night, and they did not have to worry that Filch would suddenly jump out and drag them to see the professors. He was still in the Forbidden Forest, and if he dared to see the professor, Harry would tell the professor that he was studying black magic, and Filch would be finished. Harry had thought that the headmaster's office was empty, but as soon as he came near, he saw that the door was open, and there was a bright light coming from inside. He heard the voices of many people talking, and someone sobbing in a very small voice. He heard Professor Meg's voice. She consoled, "We will find him." "No," the sobbing voice said. "We can't find him. The whole Ministry of Magic has disappeared. When we went back, we only dug up the soil. Sob, sob. No one thought this would happen, Headmaster." Professor Mag said to Dumbledore, "I don't even know how to tell the children. There are 4 Gryffindors, and Mr. Finney was in the Ministry of Magic at that time. He went to the Diagon Alley to complain about the fake potion that could expel goblins. But who knew that this would happen? It's appalling. His son is in the 3rd grade. Gryffindor has 4 children like this. What should I tell them?" Professor Mag's voice started to sob as she spoke. "I'm thinking about how to tell Harry," an unfamiliar voice said. "Lupin, we can tell the truth." Dumbledore's voice suddenly came. Lupin retorted, "But we haven't caught Pettigrew yet, and serious case no one will overturn it. The Ministry of Magic is gone. He may have to bear the label of a murderer for a long time. If we tell Harry the truth, I'm afraid he will fall into hatred. If we don't tell the truth, it's not fair to Harry." Harry heard this and immediately hid behind the door. He held Hermione and Ron down tightly and listened quietly. "There's nothing to hide." It was Snape's voice. "Everyone knows about Sirius, that restless father of his. James Potter's most trusted lackey betrayed him and caused Voldemort to come knocking on his door." Snape snorted coldly. "It's just that he changed that person's name." "Is that because Lily never trusted you?" the man called Lupin retorted. Harry heard his mother's name, and Snape's voice was trembling. James Potter should be thankful that he didn't die under the claws of his good friend. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to wait for Voldemort. There was a commotion in the headmaster's office until Dumbledore shouted, "Severus!" "Enough!" Dumbledore said sorrowfully. "The tragedy of the past is not a reason for us to hurt each other. The only thing we can do is to prevent the tragedy from happening again, even though it has already happened. Everyone, is what happened in the Ministry of Magic today not enough to wake you up? The new Black Devil has been born. He's even scarier than his predecessor." "Ah!" Ron cried out in surprise. Footsteps could be heard rushing out from inside. A man with white hair and tattered clothes rushed out, but when he saw Harry, he was momentarily dazed. Then it was Professor Mag. When she saw the trio, she couldn't hide the panic on her face. She first looked around, and then yelled at the trio, "Mr. Potter, if I remember correctly, it's curfew now. There shouldn't be any students here. Hurry up and go back." Her voice was trembling slightly. "Don't I have the right to know what happened?" Harry's emotions exploded instantly. The anger that he had accumulated when he heard about the death of his parents burst out. "Little dwarf, Sirius, don't I have the right to know who betrayed my parents?" "Harry!" Professor Mag's voice was breaking. Chapter 804. Harry left in a daze. That night, the battle at the Ministry of Magic caused a ruckus in the whole of Hogwarts. The Daily Prophet even used the headline, "The Destruction of the Ministry of Magic," along with a photo of Dumbledore leading the Auror escaping from the Ministry of Magic in a sorry state to report this sensational news. In the photo, the Auror looked at the camera in despair. Dumbledore's eyes were tired and he looked abnormally old. Most wizards who read the Daily Prophet thought that Dumbledore was already old. He might still be able to deal with his old rival Voldemort, but he seemed to be unable to adapt to the rising threat of the new evil. When the sky finally brightened and the sun rose high in the sky, Harry was dragged by Hermione and Ron to the hall. The Hogwarts students who were waiting for breakfast were already in an uproar. Malfoy's face was a little pale. He glanced at Harry and whispered, "Dumbledore is old. The new order of the world of magic will be created by the younger generation. Look at his long white beard. Even if we can trust that he will not make the muddle-headed mistakes of the old, he will not be able to deal with the new threat. He can only deal with Voldemort, a dark devil as old as him. Harry did not react to his nemesis's mockery at all. Last night he had learned about the grudges between Sirius, Lupin, Peter Pettigrew, and his parents. He seemed to have not digested the content. He bent his body slightly to hide the golden Ministry of Magic that he was holding in his arms. He touched the uneven hieroglyphs on the cover. His heart was tormented, and he was hesitating. A large flock of owls barged into Hogwarts dining hall. The owls here were almost all of Hogwarts management. It seemed that every wizard had sent a letter to their children. Some of the envelopes were covered in solemn colors, such as black and white. Some of them even had a white chrysanthemum or some kind of potion flower that could make a sobbing potion wrapped around it like a tide and landed in front of a third-year wizard in Gryffindor. The young wizard was dumbfounded in his seat. His eyes were quickly filled with tears. His expression was one of despair and disbelief. Hermione whispered, "Oh my God! What's going on? It must be something very bad." Ron whispered to her, "That's a letter of condolence and memorial. There might even be a eulogy." As Ron spoke, a witch barged into the dining hall and dragged away a young wizard named Hotchpatch. Before she left, she said, "Apologize to Professor Dumbledore for me. I know I should trust him, but fear is driving me crazy. He has to go home. We'll go back to his grandmother's house, far away in Brazil. Hopefully, we'll be able to avoid those terrible things." Without finishing her sentence, she pulled up her scarf, took the hand of the first-year wizard, and hurried away. She was definitely not the only witch to do so. Ron even saw Neville's uncle rushing into the headmaster's office. Fortunately, Neville was not called away. Dumbledore's footsteps were a little hurried as he rushed into the hall. He looked at the empty table and silently opened his mouth, silently moving the empty chairs away. Dumbledore came to the podium. The copper owl's wings spread out silently, and Dumbledore's voice was clearly transmitted to the ears of everyone present, including those heartless exchange students from the Durmstrang Magic School. From today onwards, there will be at least 3 professors on duty every night. No students will be allowed to roam at night or appear in the corridors during curfew. The permission for senior students to go to Hogsmeade Village during Christmas will be temporarily cancelled. You may have heard about what happened at the Ministry of Magic, but I have to warn everyone again. What truly makes us feel fear is fear itself. Courage does not only exist in rashness, but also in people's calmness and bravery. Chen Ong calmly looked at the crowd below, like the book that Harry had hidden in his arms, the metal pages that Malfoy was holding, the eager Durmstrang exchange students. The leader of the group was the little guy Yakov, who was always stirring up trouble, like a clockwork gnome, and Snape, who was deep in thought as he looked at Harry. And the demon eel on the plate in front of him, with its eyes still open and its head facing the sky, had dense spiral teeth like a lamprey. This dish was exactly the same as the famous British Muggle dish, lamprey gazing at the starry sky. It was a disgrace to the Hogwarts house elves. This breakfast, everyone was a little tasteless, especially after watching Chen Ong calmly bite open the demon eel's head. Snape was the first to leave his seat. Hopefully, he wasn't going to the kitchen to protest about not being able to keep the precious potion ingredient. "Harry, after breakfast," Ron and Hermione hurried to catch up with Harry. "Today. Are you all right today?" Ron looked worried. "So many things. I don't know how to deal with it. Do you know?" Harry turned around and asked solemnly, "Scabby is an animagus, and very likely one of the culprits who killed my parents. Yet he escaped punishment from the law." Ron opened his mouth wide and said with some fear, "I knew it. I knew that no mouse could live that long." "I've been asking myself," Harry said. Harry said, "Ask yourself if I find him and prove it to him. Then what should I do with him?" "Ron." Ron stuttered. "I don't know. I haven't reacted yet." Hermione grabbed Harry's hand and said, "You should let the Auror deal with you. Don't stare into the abyss. Harry." "But I really want to kill him," Harry said. "It's not an impulse, but the result of careful consideration. You saw your rat turn into a little wizard, Ron. And this person, who might be Peter Pettigrew, appeared at the place where the unicorn died. Although we know that Malfoy killed the unicorn, it's obvious that Malfoy isn't the only one who needs the unicorn's blood. There's another person who appeared there who also needs it." Ron and Hermione said in unison, "Voldemort, Mystery Man." "Malfoy caught Voldemort, but I'd rather believe that he only caught part of Voldemort. There's another Voldemort hidden in the darkness. It's on Peter Pettigrew,